What if Harry was trained by Anton Chigurh as a cold-blooded killer since age 5? A crossover novel, Harry Potter times No Country for Old Men. Chapter 1. The wrong house. He came across the channel on a fishing boat out of Calais. The boat smelled of diesel and old salt, and the captain had a bad eye, and the captain did not ask his name. The man paid in pounds, and the captain nodded once and looked at the water and said nothing further. The man carried a leather grip and a long canvas tool case and a coat folded over one arm, and that was all. It was the autumn of 1986. The light over the channel was the color of beaten lead, and the gulls hung in it as if pinned to a board. He stood at the rail and watched the chalk cliffs rise the way a slow thought rises, and he did not turn his head when the captain spoke to him. He was a quiet man, and he wore his quietness about him like a garment cut to his frame. In Dover he took a train. In London he took another. He read no paper. He spoke to no one. He had a face that the eye refused to settle on and a haircut that suggested a wound. When the conductor came, he produced a ticket, and the conductor punched it and moved on, and afterward could not have described him. He had been hired by men who did not know his name and who knew only the name of the man they wished delivered. The man they wished delivered was a courier of a particular cartel out of Sinaloa, and the courier had taken with him certain accounts and certain promises, and had retired to a market town outside Reading, where he had a sister and a sister's husband and a small house with a green door. The men who hired the quiet man did not require the courier alive. They required the courier finished, and they required the ledgers returned. They paid in cash, and they paid through a Mexican bank, and the quiet man took the work because the work was offered, and because work was the only structure he respected. His name on this passport was Mauricio Chamoy. His name on other passports was other names. His name to himself was a thing he kept in a place where he could see it without disturbing it. He hired a car in Reading from a man who had once been a soldier and who watched the quiet man's hands while they exchanged keys. The man was right to watch the hands. The hands were the part of the quiet man that did the work. He drove out into the suburbs in the early dark. He drove past low houses set back from the road behind hedges, and past street lamps that hummed, and past a fox crossing the verge that paused and watched him with its small bright eye, and then went on. He had a slip of paper in his pocket with an address on it, and the address was for the green door, but the slip of paper was wrong. It had been wrong since the man in the warehouse in Birmingham had read it from a clipboard and copied it for him. A single digit transposed, 4 into 5, 4 privet drive instead of 5 privet drive. A small thing. The small things were what undid you in the end. He had said this often, and to many men who would not have a chance to say it back. He pulled to the curb under a sycamore tree and turned off the engine and sat for a long time and listened to the engine tick down. Then he took up his grip and his coat, and he got out and crossed the street. The house was identical to its neighbors, and the lawn was clipped and the hedge was clipped, and there was a little gate that did not creak when he opened it, which told him something about the man who owned it. There was a light in the lower windows and a flicker beyond the curtains and the murmur of a television set. He went around to the rear. The rear was darker. He stood under the eaves and listened. He could hear a man's voice raised in the house, a heavy voice with an undertone of phlegm. The voice was angry, but the anger was old in it and rehearsed, and not really anger anymore, but only the shape of anger left over from a long habit. There was a woman's voice, too thin and high, and there was a child's voice complaining of something, and then a sudden silence, and then the woman's voice again, very calm, saying something that the quiet man could not catch. He took from his coat a small leather wallet of tools, and he opened the back door in the time it takes a careful man to roll a cigarette. He stepped into the kitchen. The kitchen smelled of fried meat and bleach. There was a yellow light over the cooker and a clock on the wall with a second hand that ticked very loud in the quiet. He listened. The television was in the front room. There was a man in there and a woman in there and a child in there. He could hear 3 breaths. He could hear them the way you can hear 3 different clocks if you stand still enough and listen. He set down his grip on the table very softly, and he opened it. He took out the bolt pistol. The pistol was made for the slaughter of cattle. It was a cylinder of black steel with a rubber grip and an air hose that ran to a small canister he wore on a strap under his coat. When you pressed the muzzle to a forehead and squeezed the trigger, a rod of steel drove forward 1.5 inches and then retracted. It made a sound like a hammer striking a board through a thick coat. It was a tool for the unmaking of things. He preferred it to firearms because it left a small, clean wound, and because it left no metal in the world that could later be traced back to him, and because there was a kind of honesty to it that pleased him. He went down the hall. He passed a row of small framed photographs of a fat man and a thin woman and a fat boy, and he did not look at them. He passed a door that was closed, and that had a little brass slot at the bottom that did not belong on a door, and he paused. The slot was a feeding slot. He had seen its like in prisons in 2 countries. He bent down and put his eye to it. There was a cupboard under the stairs, and there was a child in the cupboard. The cupboard had a bulb in it on a string, and the child had pulled the string, and the child was sitting cross-legged on a thin mattress reading a book held very close to his face. The book was old and the pages were curled. The child was perhaps 5 years old. His hair was black and very untidy. He wore pajamas too large for him, and the pajamas were striped, and the stripes were the wrong color, and they had been somebody else's pajamas first. The child had a bruise the size of a man's hand across his upper arm and another above his ear, half hidden by the hair, and there was a scab on the corner of his mouth that had been split open more than once and never properly healed. The child read on as if he had not heard the murmur in the slot. The quiet man stood up. He stood up and he stood very still, and he considered. He had not come for this. He had come for a courier in a house with a green door who had taken what was not his and who would now finish his life on the floor of a hired front room. That was the work. That was the architecture of the night. The child in the cupboard was no part of the architecture. The child in the cupboard was an accident of geography and a transposed digit on a slip of paper in his coat pocket. He had not come for this, and yet here it was. He stood for a long time outside the cupboard, and his face did not change. In the front room, the man's voice rose again. There was a slap. The slap was the slap of a heavy hand against an upholstered chair, and not against a person, but it was the sound of a man who slapped persons. The boy in the cupboard did not look up from his book. The quiet man crossed the hall. He stepped into the doorway of the front room. The television was playing a comedy with a laugh track, and the laughs swelled in the room like a tide and receded. There was a fat man in an armchair with a glass in his hand, and there was a thin woman on a sofa knitting something pink, and there was a fat boy on the floor lying on his stomach eating biscuits from a tin and watching the screen. None of them saw the quiet man in the doorway. The dog of the household had died the previous summer, and there was nothing in the room that watched. He cleared his throat very softly. The fat man looked up. The fat man saw a stranger in his doorway in a coat with a black cylinder in his right hand and a face the eye refused to settle on. The fat man's first reaction was not fear. The fat man's first reaction was an indignation so total that it briefly displaced all other thought. "Who are you?" he said. "What do you think you are doing in my house?" The quiet man said nothing. He raised the cylinder, and he set the muzzle against the fat man's forehead just above the bridge of the nose, and he squeezed the trigger. There was a sound like a hammer striking a board through a thick coat. The fat man's eyes went out, and the glass fell from his hand and rolled across the carpet without spilling, and the fat man slumped sideways into the wing of the chair as if he had only meant to nap. The thin woman had time to draw one breath and to look up from her knitting. She did not scream. She had a face capable of screaming, but she was a woman who had been taught from childhood that screaming was a thing other people did. The quiet man crossed the room and set the muzzle to her forehead and squeezed the trigger. Her knitting needles fell to her lap and remained crossed there like a small ceremonial X. The fat boy on the floor had turned his head, and his mouth was open, and a biscuit lay on the carpet at his elbow. The quiet man knelt beside him. The fat boy began to whimper. The quiet man set the muzzle to his temple and squeezed the trigger, and the whimper stopped. He stood up. The television laughed. He turned the television off. In the silence, the only sound was the second hand of the kitchen clock. He went back down the hall. He stopped at the cupboard door. He drew the bolt back. He opened the door. The child looked up from his book. The child's eyes were green and very steady. They did not widen. They did not narrow. They considered the man in the doorway the way a small animal considers a thing it has not seen before and is not yet ready to flee from. "What is your name?" the quiet man said. The child did not answer. "What is your name?" he said again. "Harry," the child said. "Harry what?" "Harry Potter." The quiet man crouched. He set the bolt pistol down on the floor of the hall outside the cupboard in a manner that the child could see, and he laid his hands palm up on his knees. "Do you know what this is?" he said, nodding to the pistol. The child looked at the pistol. He looked back at the man. "No," he said, "it is a thing for ending things." The man said, "It is not a gun, it is for cattle. It is for animals to whom one owes a clean death." The child said nothing. The man considered him. "Are you hungry?" he said. The child looked at him. "I have not eaten anything since the morning the day before," the child said. The man nodded slowly. He took a coin from his pocket. The coin was American. It was a quarter, and it was very old, and it was very worn, and on one side was an eagle, and on the other was the head of a man dead 200 years. "I want you to call something for me," he said. "I am going to flip this coin. You are going to call it heads or tails. Do you understand what those words mean?" "Yes," the child said. "Do you know what is on the line?" The child looked past him to the open door at the end of the hall. From the open doorway of the front room there came a thin trickle of light and an absence of any other sound at all. He looked back at the man. "Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon and Dudley," he said. The man did not answer. "They are gone," the child said. It was not a question. The man nodded. The child closed the book in his lap and laid it aside on the mattress. He sat very still. He did not cry. He did not breathe out the way a child breathes out who has been waiting a long time for a thing to end. He sat in a stillness that was older than he was. The man saw it and was struck by it, and the small bell in his blood that he had not known he carried began to ring. The man held up the coin. "I am going to flip this," he said. "If you call it, you go with me. If you do not call it, you stay here. Other men will come in the morning. They will find what they find. They will take you to a house with other women and other rules, and you will be one of them, and what you become will be a thing decided by them in committee. Do you understand?" "Yes, call it." The child did not speak. "Call it," the man said again, "heads or tails." The child looked at the coin. He looked at the man. He looked at the coin again. His small mouth moved once and did not yet form a word. Then it did. "I don't want to call." The man's expression did not change, but something in the geometry of his face shifted very slightly, the way the surface of a deep pool shifts when something deep within it moves. "You do not want to call," he said. "Number why?" The child seemed to consider the question with great seriousness. He considered it for a long time. The clock in the kitchen ticked. A car passed in the street outside, and its headlights swept the wall of the hallway and dimmed. "Because," the child said, "your coin doesn't decide for me." The man waited. "I decide," the child said. Some part of the man that had been silent for 30 years made a small sound he had never made before. It was not laughter. It was a thing somewhere underneath laughter. He set the coin down on the floor between them, and he looked at it, and then he looked at the boy. He did not pick the coin up again. "I have asked a great many men to call a coin," he said. "None of them have ever said what you have just said." "What did they say?" "Heads mostly, or tail. Some of them said other things." "None of them said what you have said." "Did they live?" "Some of them." The child looked at the coin where it lay between them on the linoleum of the hall floor. "I'm coming with you," he said. "You have not been asked." "You don't ask," the child said. "You weigh." The man looked at him. He picked up the bolt pistol very slowly, and he set it back inside his coat. He picked up the coin, and he turned it once in his fingers, and he put it in his pocket. He held out his hand. The child looked at the hand for a long moment, and then he took it. He came up out of the cupboard onto his bare feet, and he did not look back into the cupboard, and he did not look toward the doorway of the front room and the trickle of light coming out of it. He stood beside the man in the hall, and he was very small beside the man. "I have shoes," the child said. "They are upstairs. They are Dudley's old ones." "Leave them," the man said. "We will get you others." The man went up the stairs anyway. He took a school satchel from a hook on the landing, and he went into a small unused bedroom, and he opened a drawer, and he took a folded jumper and a pair of trousers and 2 pairs of socks, and he put them in the satchel, and he came back down. He took an overcoat from a hook by the front door, a child's overcoat that had once been blue and had now been washed too many times into a color that was no color. He put the overcoat on the boy, and the boy stood patiently and lifted his arms. In the hall, he stopped and turned the boy by the shoulder so that the boy was facing him. "If you come with me," he said, "you will see things that are not for children." "I have seen things that are not for children," the boy said. "Other things." The boy looked at him with the steady green eyes. "Are you a bad man?" he said. The man considered the question. "I am a man who works," he said. "The work is what people call bad. The work is necessary. There is a difference between bad and necessary. Most people cannot tell the difference. I can tell it. You will learn to tell it." The boy nodded once as if accepting an explanation of weather. They went out the back door the way the man had come in. The night was cold, and the smell of the wet hedge was thick, and a moon had come up over the roofs of Privet Drive that did not look at them and that they did not look at. The man took the boy across the lawn and through the little gate and across the street to the hired car under the sycamore. He opened the passenger door, and he stood the boy on the seat, and he reached across him and pulled the seat belt across his small chest and clicked it home. "I have wiped down what needs wiping," he said, more to himself than to the boy. He had been doing this all the while behind the eyes, the doorknobs, the cupboard latch, the clock he had not touched. He had run the small inventory in some back room of his mind without seeming to think about it. There are men who think they are without habit, and there are men who are nothing but habit. He was the second kind, but his habits were such fine instruments that they passed for thought. He started the engine. "What is your name?" the boy said. He looked at the boy. "Anton," he said. "Anton what?" "Chigurh." "Chigurh," the boy said. He tried it once in his mouth like a stone. He swallowed it. "Anton," he said. "Yes, I am hungry." "I know, I will feed you." He pulled away from the curb, and he drove out of Privet Drive, and he turned south. He drove for a long time without speaking. After a while he glanced over, and the boy was still upright with his small hands folded in his lap, and his green eyes open and watching the dark countryside go past. "Are they really gone?" the boy said. "Yes." The boy considered this. "Did you do it because they were bad to me?" "Number why then?" "I had come to the wrong house," the man said. "They saw my face. I do not leave my face behind in houses." The boy considered this also. "Then it was an accident," he said. "They are gone because of an accident." "It was not an accident," the man said. "It was a consequence. The wrong address was an accident. What followed was a consequence. The two are not the same. An accident is a thing that happens. A consequence is a thing that precedes. Do you understand the difference? The boy thought about it. The accident was the writing of the address, he said. The consequence was you in the house. Yes, then I am also a consequence, the boy said. Not an accident, because you found me after. The man drove for a quarter of a mile in silence. Yes, he said, you also are a consequence. The boy nodded. He turned his face to the window. The hedgerows ran past in the dark. He fell asleep in a way that was not so much falling as setting himself down very carefully in a place he had been before. His head lay against the cold glass. His breath fogged a small circle of it, and the circle pulsed and shrank with his breathing, and he did not stir. The man drove south through the night. He stopped at a petrol station near Basingstoke, and he filled the tank, and he bought a packet of crackers and a small pot of chocolate spread and a carton of milk, and he set them on the seat between them for when the boy woke. He drove on. He was thinking. He was thinking in a way he had not had occasion to think for a long time. He had not come for a child. He had come for a courier with a green door. He would find the courier tomorrow or the next day. The courier would not become less findable in the meantime. The work was the work, and the work waited. But there had been a child in a cupboard. And the child had been bruised, and the child had been silent, and the child had been reading a book in the small bulb light of a feeding slot prison. And when he had asked the child to call a coin, the child had said number, the child had said number. He had asked many men to call. He had asked them when they were certain they had a future. He had asked them when they were certain they had none. He had asked them in motels and on the porches of suburban houses and on the floors of restaurants and along the dirt verges of border roads. Heads, they said, tails. They said it because he asked, and because they thought that compliance was a survival, and because the choice he offered them was a choice in the same way that breathing is a choice. They had each been told their whole lives that there were no real choices, and so when a man came and gave them a fake one, they took it. They took the fake one because it was the only kind they knew how to take. This child had been 5 years old in a cupboard, and the child had refused. The child had said, I decide. The man drove. After a while, he set one hand on the boy's small shoulder for a moment and then took it away. The boy did not wake. He had not been a man given to anything resembling tenderness. The motion of the hand surprised him slightly. He thought about it as he drove. He noted it and set it aside in the same drawer where he kept other things he did not yet understand about himself. What is your name? The boy had asked. Anton, he had said. He had not lied. There were many things he was. The name was the truest thing he had told a stranger in a great many years. He drove south. He came to a small private aerodrome owned by a man he had paid in advance, and the man asked no questions, and the boy slept on through the small whine of the propellers warming up and through the takeoff and the climb out over the channel. The boy slept across 2 seats with his small head pillowed on the folded coat. He slept with the easy completeness of a child who has long ago learned to sleep through anything because waking has rarely been any improvement. They flew south, across France in the early hours, across Spain in the gray. They came down at a strip in the brush country outside a town whose name the boy would not know for years and whose name when he learned it would not matter. There was a jeep waiting and a man waiting beside the jeep, and the man's hat was very wide and his face was very still. The man did not raise his hand. He did not speak. He nodded once to the quiet man, and he looked at the child, and the child looked back at him with the steady green eyes, and the man looked away. What is the boy? The man said in Spanish. Mine, the quiet man said. The man nodded once and started the jeep. They drove out across the dry country in the morning. The sun came up over the low brown hills and made hard shadows of the brush. The boy ate the crackers and the chocolate spread sitting upright on the seat between the 2 men, and he drank from the milk carton without spilling. He looked out at the country going past. The country was nothing like Privet Drive. The country was nothing like anything he had ever seen. He chewed his cracker very deliberately, and he swallowed and he watched. Where are we? He said. Mexico, the quiet man said. Mexico, the boy said. He looked out the open side of the jeep. A pair of black birds rose out of a tree and flew across the road and were gone behind the jeep. He watched them go. I have never been here, he said. You have now, the quiet man said. The boy nodded. They drove on. The driver glanced at the small boy and at the still man in the passenger seat, and he glanced again at the road. He did not speak. After many years, he would tell the story to no one because the people you could tell such a story to, and have them believe you were not the people you wished to know. The boy looked out at the country. In his pocket, the quiet man's hand closed slowly around the worn American quarter and did not let it go. The boy in the jeep did not know yet what country he was in. He did not know yet what was to be made of the country or of the man beside him or of the road they were driving. The road had no shoulder. The road had no other traffic. The road went on into the morning, and the morning was already very bright. He had spent 5 years in a cupboard. He had been outside the cupboard now for a single night and a single morning, and the world had revealed itself to be a place infinitely larger than he had been able to imagine. And the man who had reached his hand into the cupboard was a man with a stillness in him the boy had recognized at once, the way an animal recognizes its own kind. He He set his small hand on the dust-coated handle of the Jeep door and held it there for a moment to feel the heat of the metal. He took the hand away. In the front seat, the quiet man and the man in the wide hat spoke now and then in low Spanish. The boy did not understand the words. He listened to the music of them. He set the music in his ear. He would learn this music, he understood, very soon. He would have a long time, he would have the rest of his life. The life that had begun for him in the cupboard had ended in the cupboard, and the life that had begun for him in the hall outside the cupboard, when a tall thin man with a black cylinder and an American quarter had asked him to call a coin and he had refused, was the life he was driving into now. He had not chosen to be born. He had not chosen the Dursleys. He had chosen the refusal. The refusal had been the first choice of his life, and the refusal had been a true choice, and the world was already different because of it. He understood this in a small calm way at 5 years old, in the back of a Jeep on a brown road in a country he could not yet name. He understood it without language for it. He would have language for it in later years and would write it down in a notebook in pencil and would burn the page afterward. He understood it now without language, and that was enough. The Jeep climbed a low rise. The brown country fell away on both sides. A pair of vultures rose in the air on a column of heat and went up, turning. The boy watched them. The man in the wide hat shifted gears. The quiet man set his hand on the boy's shoulder very briefly, the way he had set his hand on the boy's shoulder in the car outside Basingstoke, and took the hand away. The boy did not turn his head. He had been seen. He had been chosen. He had been brought. It was enough. Chapter 2. The country of iron. The house was a long, low concrete thing set back from a dirt road on a ridge above a dry river. There was no name on the gate and no number on the gate, and the gate stood open, and a brown dog lay under a yucca tree and watched them pass with one ear cocked. The driver brought the Jeep up to the front of the house and stopped and shut off the engine, and the engine ticked in the dust. The man called Chigurh got out and went around and lifted the boy down. The boy stood in the dust in his 2 large pajamas and his overcoat that was the color of no color, and looked at the house and looked at the country. It was the country of iron and creosote and small mean trees that had been making a living out of nothing for 10,000 years. The wind off the ridge was hot and smelled of dry stone. The hills behind the house were the color of a poured clay, and the sky over them was the same blue from one horizon to the other. A woman came out of the house. She was perhaps 40 years old. She wore a clean white apron over a black dress, and her hair was tied back in a knot at the nape of her neck, and she had a knife at her belt of the kind a butcher carries. Her face was a face that had been still for a long time. She came down the steps and stood and looked at Chigurh and at the boy. "Quien existe," she said. "Mio," Chigurh said. She looked at the boy. The boy looked back at her with the steady green eye. "Inglés," she said. "Está sucio. Está cansado," Chigurh said. "Lo bañaremos. Lo vestiremos. Lo alimentaremos." She did not nod. She turned and went back into the house. Chigurh laid a hand on the boy's shoulder very lightly. "Vamos," he said. "What did she say?" She asked who you are. "What did you say?" "I said you are mine." The boy considered this. He looked up at the man and the man looked down at him. "That is true now," the boy said, "isn't it?" "Yes, all right," the boy said. They went up the steps into the house. The house had thick walls of poured concrete and small high windows and tile floors that were cool to bare feet. There was a courtyard at the center with a fountain in it that did not run. There were rifles in a rack on a wall of the front room, and there was a kitchen with copper pots hanging from a beam, and there was a long table of dark wood with 12 chairs around it, though there were never 12 men in the house at any one time the boy ever knew of. There was a chapel off the kitchen with a small virgin in it whose face had been worn by hands until it was almost no face anymore. There was a back room with a steel door. The back room was where Chigurh slept. There was a smaller room beside it that became the boy's. The boy was bathed by the woman in a tin bath in the kitchen. She did not speak to him. She scrubbed him with a brush that left him pink, and she dressed him in clothing that had been bought that morning in town by the driver, and she sat him on a stool at the long table, and she set in front of him a plate of beans and rice and a tortilla and a glass of milk. He ate slowly. He ate as if he had forgotten he was permitted to. He finished and looked up. "Moss," he tried to say. He did not know the word. He held up the empty plate. She took the plate. She brought another. He ate that too. He did not finish a third. She took it away and she nodded once, and that was the closest thing to approval he had received in his life, and he understood it. In the back room, Chigurh stood at the window with his hands in his pockets and looked out at the dry river. The driver was gone. The brown dog had moved into the shade of the courtyard. There was no sound but the wind. He turned. The boy was in the doorway. "What is it?" Chigurh said. "What do I do here?" the boy said. Chigurh considered the question. "You learn," he said. "Learn what?" "Whatever I teach you. Some of it I will know I am teaching, some of it I will not." The boy stood in the doorway. He was not a child given to questions. He had grown up in a place where questions were punished and where the absence of questions was rewarded with not being noticed. He stood quiet for a long moment. Are there other children here? He said. Number, will I go to school? You will be schooled. Chigurh said. It will not be a school. You will learn languages. You will learn arithmetic. You will learn the names of plants and the names of animals and how each of them lives. You will learn the histories of countries. You will learn what is in books and what is not in books. The boy in a desk learns one of these things. You will learn both. What else? You will learn to wait. You will learn to listen. You will learn to look at a man and know in 3 breaths whether he is afraid of you or only impatient with you. You will learn the difference between what people say and what they have decided. You will learn weapons. You will learn the body. You will learn that the body is a thing that can be moved and a thing that can be ended, and a thing that can be made to do work it does not wish to do. The boy nodded slowly. When will I learn the weapons? Chigurh looked at him. When you ask, he said, and not before. I am asking, not yet. You have asked the wrong question. You have asked when. The right question is why. When you can answer why, you can be taught how. We are not in a hurry. The boy thought about this. Why do you have weapons? He said. To work. Chigurh said. What is the work? Chigurh sat down on the edge of the bed in the back room. He laid his hands on his knees. He looked at the boy in the doorway. There are men in the world, he said, who have decided things. They have decided to take things that belong to other men. They have decided to break agreements. They have decided to be a danger to other men's livelihoods. Other men who have suffered these decisions hire me. I find the men who have decided. I deliver to them the consequence of their decisions. That is the work. You kill them. Yes, is that bad? Bad is a word that means different things in different places. In some places the work is illegal. In some places it is necessary. In some places both. The word bad is a word people use when they do not wish to look closely at a thing. We will look closely at things. We will not use the word bad. What word will we use? We will use the word that fits. We will use consequence. We will use necessity. We will use the word work. We will use other words when other words fit. The wrong word in a man's mouth is a tool used wrong. It marks the user. The boy nodded. What if you find men who do not deserve consequence? He said. Chigurh looked at him. That is a different question, he said. That is the question that takes longer to answer. We will come to it when you are ready. The boy went to the bed and sat down beside the man. He sat with his small feet not touching the floor. He looked at his hands. I want to learn Spanish, he said. You will. I want to learn it fast. You will learn it at the speed it is learned. Faster is a wish people have who do not understand that learning is the work itself. You cannot rush the work. You can only do it. All right, the boy said. That night he slept in the small room beside Chigurh's. The bed had a mattress that was thicker than the one in the cupboard had been, and there were no slats above his face. He lay on his back and looked at the ceiling. The ceiling was a poured concrete ceiling, and there were faint marks in it from the forms it had been poured against. A small lizard came out of a crack and ran across the ceiling and stopped and considered him and ran on. The boy watched it go. He did not feel afraid. He did not feel safe. He felt something new which he did not have a name for and which would not have a name for several years yet. He felt the absence of having to listen for a door. He slept. In the morning the woman fed him eggs and beans and a sweet bread that tasted of cinnamon, and Chigurh sat at the other end of the long table reading a thin paper folded twice and drinking coffee from a small cup. The man looked up when the boy came in. Buenos dias, he said. The boy considered the words. Buenos dias, he said back. Chigurh nodded slightly. We begin, he said. What do we begin? Everything. They began with the body. In the cool of the morning, Chigurh took the boy out behind the house, and there was a small ramada of poles and palms and a packed earth floor, and there were 2 wooden posts driven into the ground at the edge of it. He stood the boy on a line scratched in the dirt, and he taught him to stand. To stand was a thing the boy thought he already knew. He did not know it. He learned in the first hour that he did not know it. Chigurh moved the boy's weight from one foot to the other and back. He set the boy's shoulders. He set the boy's head. He had the boy hold his arms out at his sides until they shook. He had the boy let them down. He had him hold them out again. He set the boy's feet on the line, and he pushed the boy in the chest, and the boy fell back into the dust. He set the boy back on the line. When I push you, he said, do not fall, do not lean, do not lock your knees, receive the push. Send it through you into the ground. Your weight is your ally. Lend it nothing, carry it all. He pushed the boy fell. Again Chigurh said. The boy stood up. He took the line. The man pushed him. The boy fell again. By noon the boy could stand against the push for the count of 2. By the next noon for the count of 4. By the end of the week he could stand against the push for as long as Chigurh wished to push. You will not be a large man, Chigurh said. Your enemies will be larger. Your size is not your tool. Your settlement is your tool. A small man set in himself is a thing a large man cannot move. A small man not set in himself is a leaf. Be not a leaf. The boy nodded. After standing they did walking. They walked across a field of small stones, and Chigurh taught the boy to walk so as to make no sound. The boy was very bad at this. The boy crashed and clattered like a thing pulled by a string. Chigurh did not raise his voice. He took the boy back to the start and they walked again. The boy crashed. They went back to the start. They walked. They walked the field 100 times in the first week, and the boy was bruised on his shins from misplaced steps, and his temper would have risen in another child, but in this child the temper did not rise. The boy had no temper. The boy had only consideration. He considered each step. He considered the next. By the end of a month he could cross the field of stones in silence. Chigurh did not praise him for it. Praise was not a tool Chigurh used. He took the boy out a half-mile further, and they began on another field of larger stones, and the boy began again from nothing. They studied. There was a room off the kitchen with a small table and 2 chairs and shelves of books. The books were in several languages. There were grammars and dictionaries and maps. There was a globe on a stand. There were books on plants of the Chihuahuan desert, and books on the histories of the cartels, and books on the Roman wars, and books on the principles of mechanics, and books of poetry whose pages had been turned often. There was a book of the Gospels in Greek that had been Chigurh's mother's, though the boy would not learn this for years. There was a copy of the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. There was a copy of the Tao Te Ching. There was a slim book by a man called Heraclitus that contained only fragments and a great deal of white paper. There was a Bible in Spanish. Read, Chigurh said. I cannot read Spanish. Read English. The boy chose a book at random. It was a book on the propagation of cacti. He read aloud to Chigurh sitting across from him at the small table. He read slowly and clearly, and when he came to a word he did not know, he stopped and looked at the man. Chigurh would say the word, sometimes he would explain it, sometimes he would say nothing further. After 2 hours of reading they took Spanish. Chigurh held up an object and said its name. The boy repeated it. They moved through the house. Mesa, Silla, Cuchillo, Tenedor, Vaso, Puerta. Ventana. The boy repeated each word 3 times, and after that he did not need to be told it again. Chigurh noted this in the same back room of his mind where he had noted the laying of the hand on the boy's shoulder in the car. He set it aside. In the afternoon, they sat on the long porch, and Chigurh smoked, and the boy did not smoke, and they spoke. They spoke in English at first, and after some weeks they spoke in a mixture of English and Spanish, and after some months they spoke in Spanish entirely and would only return to English when the discussion was of an order of complexity the boy's Spanish could not yet sustain. What is a man? Chigurh said one afternoon. The boy considered this. A grown male person, he said. That is a definition. A definition is a fence around a thing. Inside the fence the thing is not yet known. What is a man? The boy thought. A man is what he does. Where did you learn that? I am thinking it. Chigurh nodded. That is closer, he said. A man is what he does. But that too is a fence. A man is also what he does not do, what he refuses to do, what he chooses to do, and what he chooses to refuse. A man is the line in the dirt he draws and the line he steps across. The drawing and the crossing both. You understand? I think so. You will understand it better when you have drawn lines and crossed lines. I have not drawn lines. You will draw them. They will be hard to see at first. Other people draw lines for children. The world draws lines for children. You will discover with time which lines were drawn for you and which you drew. The lines drawn for you are not yours. You will rub them out. You will draw your own. That is the work of becoming a man. The boy looked out across the ridge at the hills beyond. The hills had taken on a violet color in the late afternoon. What lines do you draw? He said. I draw the line of payment. Chigurh said. I do not work without payment. I do not lie about my work. When I have agreed to do a thing, I do the thing. When I have not agreed, I do not. I do not threaten. I do not warn twice. I do not torture. I do not harm those I am not paid to harm. The boy considered this last. You harmed the Dursley. I told you they saw my face, so that is a line you cross when seen. Yes. What if a child sees your face? Chigurh looked at him. This is the question I told you we would come to, he said. The boy waited. I have not yet answered it for myself, Chigurh said. The fact that you are alive is a part of the answer. The rest of the answer is not yet writ. The boy nodded. That is honest, he said. Honesty is not a virtue, Chigurh said. It is a discipline. The virtue is to know what to say and to whom. Honesty without that knowledge is a careless thing. We will come to that also. The weeks became months. The boy grew. He grew taller. He grew steadier. The bruises faded and did not return. His hair remained a wild dark brush. The mark on his forehead, the small thin lightning of a scar, remained, and Chigurh observed it and did not comment on it. It was a mark from a country the boy did not know he had come from, and Chigurh suspected without knowing what country that was. The boy had never spoken to him of the mark. The boy did not know the story of the mark. The boy thought it was something he had been born with. Chigurh did not correct him because he had no correction to give and because to lie was a careless thing. There were men who came to the house. They came in trucks. They came alone or in twos. They came with bags or without. They came at night or in the early morning when the light was new. They sat at the long table with Chigurh, and the woman brought them coffee, and they spoke in low voices, and they passed Chigurh papers or photographs or sometimes a small object of personal value to a man somewhere else. Chigurh would listen. He would consider. Sometimes he would agree to the work. Sometimes he would not. He did not haggle. He named a figure once, and the figure was the figure. The men paid or they did not pay and went away. None of them asked about the boys. The boy sat in the corner with a book on his knee and read and looked up sometimes when the conversation became interesting. The men looked at him and then they did not look at him. They had been told, or they had not been told, and they understood without being told. Either way, they did not look. After the men had gone, Chigurh would tell the boy who they were. Sinaloa, he would say, a captain. The captain has a problem with a deputy. He wishes the deputy not to be a problem any longer. He has paid. Or he would say, Juarez, a businessman. He believes his wife is being moved against by his wife's brother. He wishes assurance. He has not paid enough. I have refused. What does not paid enough mean? The boy said. It means he has offered a figure that does not cover the risk and the time and the equipment and the work and the dignity of the work, Chigurh said. There is a figure that is the right figure for any work. It is not arbitrary. It is the figure that makes the work clean. Below it the work is dirty. Dirty work is work that resents itself. A man cannot do dirty work without becoming dirty. I do not become dirty. Therefore, I do not do work that is paid below its figure. What is dignity? The boy had used the word back to him. Dignity, Chigurh said, is the agreement a man makes with himself about what he will accept. The agreement is private. It is not the same agreement for every man. A man who has no agreement has no dignity. A man whose agreement is small has small dignity. The agreement is renewed every day. Some men forget to renew it. They lose it without knowing they have lost it. What is my agreement? You are 5 years old. You do not have an agreement yet. You have only the wishes of others. You will make your agreement as you go. You will find out what you can accept and what you cannot. The discovery is the agreement. What is your agreement? I do not lie about my work. I do not warn twice. I do not torture. I do not take from those who have already paid. I do not abandon. I do not threaten children. You took me, the boy said. I did not threaten you. You killed 3 people in front of me. I did not kill them in front of you. You were in another room. You heard one sound and then no sound. I did not threaten you. I asked you to call a coin. I gave you a choice. You did not say a choice was being given. You knew. The boy was quiet a while. I knew. He said, yes. Why do you flip the coin? The boy said. Why do you ask people to call? Because Chigurh said. Because in this world there are things which cannot be reached except through a coin. There are situations in which my decision is no longer my decision. The decision belongs to a higher engine. The engine has a number of teeth. The coin is the tooth that engages. I am not the master of the coin. I am only its servant in the moment. The boy thought, but you choose to flip the coin. He said, yes. Then you are the master of the coin. I am the one who flips it. Then you are the master of the coin. Chigurh looked at him for a long time. The light was failing over the western hills. A bat went past the porch and away. I have not been called on this before, he said. I am calling on it. The boy looked at the man with the green eyes that were very steady. If the coin decides, the boy said, then you are not deciding. If you flip the coin, then you are deciding to let the coin decide. That is still deciding. You cannot give your deciding away to coin. The coin is metal. The coin does not know about itself. The coin does not know about the man whose head is on it. The coin does not know about the man you are holding it over. Only you know about all those things. The coin is empty. You are full. Chigurh did not speak for a long time. I will think about this, he said at last. All right, I have not thought about it in this way. I am thinking about it. I have been thinking about it since the cupboard. Yes, Chigurh said. I know you have. The boy nodded once. He went into the house. The woman gave him a glass of cold milk and a piece of the sweet bread, and he ate the bread and drank the milk in the kitchen and went to his room. He lay on his back and looked at the ceiling, and the small lizard came out of the crack and considered him and ran on. In the back room, Chigurh sat for a long time at the edge of the bed. He took the worn American quarter out of his pocket. He turned it once in his fingers. He set it on the bedside table on its edge, and he balanced it there. The coin stood up. He looked at the coin. The coin looked at no one because the coin was a coin. He laid himself down on the bed at last and did not sleep for some hours. When he slept, it was without dreaming. He had never dreamed in his life that he was aware of and would not begin tonight. In the days that followed, the work of the body and the work of the books continued, and a new work began. The new work was the work of the weapons. It began with a knife. He gave the boy a knife. The knife was a small folding knife with a pearl handle that had been white once and was now yellowed. The boy looked at the knife in his palm. This is yours, Chigurh said. The boy closed his fingers around it. You will carry it. You will not show it. You will not threaten with it. You will care for it. You will know where it is at every moment as you know where your hand is. When you sleep, it is under the pillow. When you eat, it is in your pocket. When you bathe, it is on the lip of the bath. When the world ends and you stand alone in a place where there is no one, this knife will still be on you because it is part of you. That is the rule of the first weapon. The boy nodded. What if I lose it, he said. Then you will have lost a part of yourself. You will not lose it. It went under his pillow that night. He woke once and his hand felt for it and found it, and he slept again. Then the bolt pistol. The bolt pistol was Chigurh's own. He set it on the long table in the morning before the sun was up. He sat the boy in the chair across from him. This is what I killed your relatives with, he said. I know. This is what I have killed many men with. I know. It is not a child's tool. It is not even most men's tool. It is a butcher's tool and a slaughterhouse tool and the tool of certain men who do certain work. I am one of those men. You will be one also if you continue with me. There's no cert. You may walk away when you are old enough to walk. I will not stop you. But while you are with me and while you are learning, you will learn this tool. The boy looked at the cylinder of black steel on the table. It killed them quick, he said. It killed them quick. Quicker than anything else would have. Yes, the boy nodded slowly. All right, he said. Chigurh showed him the tool. He showed him the air canister and the hose and the regulator and the action and the rod and the return spring. He took the tool apart on the table in pieces. He named each piece. He had the boy name each piece back. He put the tool together. He took it apart. He had the boy take it apart. The boy's hands were small but steady. He had the boy put it together. He had him put it together blindfolded. After 3 weeks, the boy could put it together in the dark in the time it takes a careful man to say his name twice. You will not fire it at a man yet, Chigurh said. You will not fire it at any living thing yet. You will fire it at boards. You will fire it at a beef hide stretched over straw. You will know its weight. You will know its kick. You will know the small thing it does when the seal is bad and the way it sighs when the canister is low. You will know it as you know your own hand. The day will come when you will use it. You will not use it before you know it. You will not use it without choosing. We do not use this tool without choosing. I do not flip the coin, the boy said. I know, but I will choose. Yes, if I choose to kill a man. Then you will know why you have chosen. You will know what the choice was. You will not say afterward that the coin decided. You will not say afterward that something larger than you decided. You will not say afterward that you had no choice. There is always choice. There is always a refusal. The refusal is also a choice. The refusal has its own consequence. You will own the consequence. The consequence is yours because the choice was yours. The boy looked at the cylinder. I am the coin, he said quietly. Chigurh tilted his head slightly. Say that again. I am the coin. I do not flip another. I do not need another. I am the coin and I am also the hand. I land where I land because I have landed. Chigurh sat very still. Where did you get that? He said. I have been thinking it. You have been thinking it. Yes. The man considered the boy for a long time. You have been with me 4 months, he said. Yes, I have been thinking my whole life and I have not thought what you have just said. Not in those words. I am sorry, the boy said. Do not be sorry. It is not a thing for sorry. It is a thing to think about. The boy nodded. He pushed back from the table and went out into the yard. He ran across the yard in the way of a child who has just remembered for a moment that he is a child. He ran into the shade of the yucca tree, and the brown dog raised its head, and the boy laid himself down beside the dog and put his arm across the dog's back, and the dog set its head back on its paws and closed its eyes. Chigurh stood at the window of the back room and watched him. A child, he said to himself, in the way one tests a word in a language one is learning. He had not had occasion to say the word before about a person he knew. It fit, it also did not fit. It fit the way a key fits a lock made for a different key and somehow turns anyway, against the engineer's drawing, against the manufacturer's intention. A door opens. You stand in the doorway and look in, and you do not know what room you are in. He did not sleep well that night, and he had not slept well for many nights now, and he had begun to understand that his sleep was changing, and that his sleep was changing because something in him was changing, and he had begun to understand that the change was not unwelcome. It was only new. He did not know yet what to do with new. He had spent a great many years with the same things. The new things did not have a place in his arrangement yet. He would arrange a place. That was the work. The work was always the work. He set the coin on its edge on the bedside table, and he watched it stand there. Outside, the wind moved in the dry brush, and the boy slept, and the dog slept, and the small lizard came out of the crack in the ceiling, and ran across the ceiling, and stopped and considered the man with the coin, and ran on. Chapter 3. I am the coin. They moved. They moved often, and they moved without ceremony. They moved in trucks, and they moved in cars, and once they moved on the deck of a small fishing trawler that smelled of bilge and shrimp, and once they crossed a river at night in a flat boat with no light. They went where the work went. The boy carried a small canvas bag with a pearl-handled knife, and a folded shirt, and a notebook, and 3 pencils, and a paperback of the Meditations, and a toothbrush. Chigurh carried what he had always carried. The woman with the apron and the knife at her belt traveled with them as far as the second house, and then she did not travel with them further. The boy understood that she was someone of Chigurh's life from before him. She did not speak to the boy when she said goodbye. She set her hand on his head for a moment, and then she withdrew the hand and turned and went into her own house in a small town near the coast, and she did not look back. The boy looked back. She did not turn around. He understood that this was not an absence of feeling. It was a presence of discipline. He followed the lesson away. They went south. They went west. They came up into the high country in Sonora, and they crossed into Arizona at a place where no one watched, and they came down through New Mexico and into Texas, and along the river. They lived for a while in San Antonio in an apartment above a body shop. They lived for a while in a single-story house in Laredo with a screen porch and a banana tree in the yard. They lived for a while in a hotel in Reynosa where the elevator did not work, and the boy walked up 4 flights, and Chigurh walked up 4 flights and never breathed harder than he had on the ground floor. They had been at this for a year and a half before the boy understood that he had stopped being a child of the Dursleys and started being a child of Chigurh, and that the change was complete, and that there was no longer any going back to who he had been. He understood it sitting on the curb outside the Laredo house eating a paleta of pineapple that Chigurh had bought him from a man with a cart. He stopped chewing. He sat with the paleta in his mouth and looked at the dust at his feet. He did not weep because weeping was not in him. He sat for some minutes, and after the minutes he resumed chewing. He went into the house and he wrote in his notebook in pencil one line, and the line was, "I am no longer who I was." Below it he wrote a second line, "I am the one I have chosen." That night Chigurh sat down on the edge of his bed in the dark. "You wrote something today," he said. "I write something most days. Today's was different." "How do you know?" "I have been watching." The boy nodded in the dark. "What did you write?" Chigurh said. "I wrote that I am the one I have chosen." Chigurh sat for a moment. "That is true," he said. "Yes, it is also new." It was not true the morning we drove out of Privet Drive. It became true. Becoming true is the slowest thing there is. Most people never become true. They die as the thing they were made by other people. "You have become true at 6 years of age. I have noted the date." The boy did not answer. Chigurh got up and went out and closed the door behind him very softly. The work went on. The boy did not yet do the work. He watched. He was instructed to watch. Sometimes he was put in a car a block away and told to count the people who entered and left a building. Sometimes he was sat in a diner and given a milkshake and told to keep his eyes on a window across the street and to memorize the face of the man who came out at a certain hour. Sometimes he was put on a park bench with a coloring book on his lap and told to listen to a conversation 2 benches over and to repeat as much of it as he could when Chigurh came back. He was good at all of these things. He was very good at them. He was so good at them that Chigurh began to find new things for him to do because the old things did not stretch him. The boy never met any of the men Chigurh worked for. He met some of the men Chigurh worked with. There was a thin man called Acuna who drove for them sometimes and who had been a priest in his youth, and who quoted scripture sideways when he was nervous. There was a heavy man called Sosa who had been a federale, and who carried a stainless steel revolver under his shirt and who could go for 2 days without sleep. There was an old woman in Matamoros called Latia who was not anyone's actual aunt, and who ran a beauty parlor in front and a small storage operation in back. She had taken a liking to the boy on the first visit. She had wiped his cheek with the corner of her apron without asking, and the boy had stood for it without flinching. After that she gave him candies from a tin every time he came. He did not eat them in the parlor. He saved them in a tin of his own. The tin lived in the canvas bag. By the time the boy was 7, he was traveling with Chigurh on jobs as well as observing them. The traveling part of jobs was the longer part. There were drives of 2 and 3 days at a time, and the boy slept in the back seat with his knees drawn up, and Chigurh drove in silence, and the country went past in long brown belts. There was a tape deck in one of the cars, and Chigurh had 3 cassettes, and he played them in rotation. One was Mozart's string quartets. One was a recording of a man called Glenn Good playing Bach. One was a tape of recitations of fragments by Heraclitus in Greek, made by a friend of Chigurh's whom the boy never met and never asked about. The boy came to love the Bach. He came to love the Heraclitus, though he did not understand a word of it. He understood the music of it, and he understood that the music of it was the meaning of it more than the words were. "What does it say?" he asked Chigurh once. "Which, the one with the man speaking, the Greek?" "It says many things," Chigurh said. "The man who wrote it died 2,500 years ago, and he wrote in fragments, and the fragments came down to us broken, and people have argued for centuries about what the fragments mean. So when I tell you what it says, I am only telling you what I have decided it says." "All right, it says character is fate." The boy thought about this for 30 miles. "That means we cannot escape ourselves," he said. "That is one reading. It can also mean we cannot escape the consequences of being ourselves. It can also mean that fate is not a thing imposed from outside, but the long-running expression of who we have made ourselves to be. It is the same thing said 3 ways. Choose the way that fits the day." "What does the rest say?" "It says, you cannot step in the same river twice. It says, the way up and the way down are the same. It says, from out of all the many particulars comes oneness, and out of oneness come all the many particulars." The boy nodded. "That is good," he said. "It is good." He played it again. He played it many times that journey. The boy was not idle when they were not on jobs. The instruction continued. Chigurh hired a tutor in San Antonio, a small dark woman with sharp eyes who came twice a week, and put the boy through arithmetic and the rudiments of algebra and the classification of plants. The tutor did not know who they were, and Chigurh did not tell her. He had told her once that the boy's parents had died in a fire and that he, Chigurh, was an uncle, and she had nodded once and never asked again. The boy was an excellent pupil. He completed his exercises before the next session, and he asked questions of an order the tutor was not always equipped to answer. And at the end of 6 months she told Chigurh she had nothing more to teach the boy, and they parted. And Chigurh paid her a year's tuition in cash for the trouble of training her replacement. And they found another tutor in Laredo who was an engineer's wife and who was kinder and louder, and who taught the boy geometry and chemistry. By the time the boy was 8, he was reading at the level of a college freshman and was working through trigonometry alone in the back of cars with a textbook and a pencil and a ruler. The languages came also. He spoke Spanish well by the end of the first year, and he spoke it fluently by the end of the second. He picked up Portuguese in 3 months from a maid in a hotel in Brownsville. He picked up some French from a book on his own. He picked up enough German to read a poem of Hölderlin, which he then made Chigurh translate to him over a long evening on a porch in West Texas. Chigurh translated. The poem was about a tree on the side of a road. The poem was about how the tree was not on the side of the road, but was the road itself, was every road. The boy considered the poem for a week, and then he wrote in his notebook, "The road is the tree." He learned to drive. He learned to drive when he was 8 years old on a dirt road outside Chihuahua with Chigurh in the passenger seat smoking, and saying nothing as the boy worked the clutch and the gears and the wheel. The boy could not see properly over the wheel, and Chigurh had cut a phone book down to size, and the boy sat on the phone book, and from the phone book the boy could see. He drove for an hour. The clutch was awkward at first. By the second hour the clutch was not awkward. By the third hour he could shift smoothly through 5 gears. By the 5th hour Chigurh said, "That is enough today." And the boy stopped the truck on the verge, and they switched, and Chigurh drove back to town. "You will not drive in places where children do not drive," Chigurh said. "You will only drive in places where I tell you. It is a skill, not a license. The skill belongs to you. The license belongs to the state. The two are not the same, I understand. You will not show the skill. The skill is a thing for use. The shown skill is a tool that has been left out where it can be taken. I understand." Then they had the conversation about the coin again. It was a Tuesday afternoon in a small motel in El Paso. The boy was sitting on the floor with his back against the bed. Chigurh was at the small table cleaning his bolt pistol with a cotton cloth and a small can of oil. "You said once," the boy said, "that the coin was the engine." "I did." "You said the engine has teeth." "Yes, I have been thinking about it." "What have you been thinking?" "If the engine has teeth, then someone built the engine. If someone built the engine, the someone who built it had a purpose. Engines do not happen. Engines are made. So either the engine is made by you, in which case the engine is yours and you decide, or the engine is made by something else, in which case that something else decides, or the engine is not really an engine and the teeth are not really teeth, and what you call the engine is only a name you have given to a thing that is not a thing. Chigurh did not look up from the cloth. "Go on," he said. "I think when you say the engine, you mean the situation, you mean the way the world is, you mean necessity. But necessity is only ever necessity in retrospect. Before a thing happens, it is not necessary. After it happens, it is necessary because it has happened. The coin does not change that. The coin only seems to. The coin is a costume necessity wears. Necessity has put on a coin so that you do not see the man behind the coin. The man behind the coin is you. You have put on the costume of necessity. You have done it for so long you have begun to believe the costume." Chigurh set down the cloth. He turned to face the boy. "How old are you?" he said. 7.5. "That is old," he said. "That is older than most men. The men I have known, including myself." The boy looked up at him with the steady green eyes. "I do not want to flip a coin for a man," the boy said. "I do not want to make a man call for his life. I do not want to put the thing that decides outside of me. I want to be the thing that decides. I want it to be me when I look at a man and decide. I want him to see me. I do not want him to see a coin. You will pay a price for this. What price? You will be the one. There will be no engine to point to. There will be no necessity to lay it on. There will be only you. When a thing is finished by your hand and you cannot say the coin decided, you cannot say the world decided. You will say I decided. You will live the rest of your life knowing you decided. You will not be able to give the decision to anyone or anything. It will follow you into rooms. It will be in your mouth when you eat. It will be in your hand when you reach for things. I know. You think you know? I know enough to choose." Chigurh sat looking at him. Outside, a truck went down the street with a loose muffler, and the buzzing of it filled the room for a moment and then faded. "I have flipped the coin since I was 19 years old," Chigurh said. "I know, for 30 years. Yes, I have done it because I believed the coin was a true mechanism. I believed that the world was a thing that ran on certain principles, and that the coin was a small device that aligned my hand with those principles. I believed that to flip a coin and to honor the call was to step out of vanity and into accuracy. I believed that the coin was a discipline. I believed that the coin made me clean." "I know what you believed. You are telling me what I believed is wrong. I am telling you what I think." "What do you think?" "I think the coin is also vanity. I think the coin is a way of pretending that you are not responsible. I think a man who is responsible should not need a coin. I think you're too good for the coin." Chigurh sat for a long time. He picked up the cloth and he wiped the muzzle of the bolt pistol once, though it did not need wiping. He set the cloth down. "I am not going to argue with you," he said. "Why? Because you may be right." The boy did not move. "Will you stop flipping it?" the boy said. "I will think about that." "How long?" "As long as it takes." The boy nodded. "That is fair," he said. Chigurh smiled. The boy had not seen him smile before. He was not entirely sure that what he was seeing was a smile. The thing in Chigurh's face was a very small thing, and it lived in the corners of the eyes more than in the mouth. It was the kind of expression a man makes when something has surprised him so completely that the apparatus of the face has not yet caught up with the soul. "Fair," Chigurh said. "The boy says fair. The boy says fair." Chigurh shook his head once very slightly. He picked up the bolt pistol and continued cleaning it. "I will tell you a thing about argument," he said after some minutes. "What? The man who wins an argument has not won the argument. He has only succeeded in being louder than the truth for a while. The man who loses an argument has not lost. He has only failed to be loud enough. The argument is not the thing. The thing is the thing. The thing exists whether or not it has been argued for. You do not argue for the sun, you stand in it. You may also build a shade if you wish, but the sun is the sun. What does that mean for us? It means I will not say I have changed my mind because you have argued. I will say I have changed my mind because I have stood in the sun." The boy considered. "Will you stand in the sun?" "I have begun to." The boy nodded. There was a long silence, and the silence was good. The work continued. The boy had not yet killed anyone, and this was a thing they did not speak about because it did not need speaking about. There was a discipline of waiting. There was a discipline of preparing. The killing would come when it came. It would not come early, and it would not come late. It would come when it was the right shape and not before. In the meanwhile, the boy continued his training in the bolt pistol, and in the knife, and in a thing called the smaller pistol, which was an actual firearm, a black thing with a slide and a magazine and a safety. And the boy learned to disassemble it, and assemble it, and clean it, and load it, and chamber it, and to hold it, and aim it, and dry fire it, and to walk with it, and to sit with it, and to sleep with it on the bedside table, though he had not yet fired it at anything that was not a piece of paper. By the time he was 9, the boy could place 10 rounds in a fist-sized circle at 15 yards with the smaller pistol, and could place 10 bolts in a fist-sized circle at point-blank with the cattle gun, which was the right range for the cattle gun and the only range that mattered. He could pick a lock in the time it takes a careful man to roll a cigarette. He could go 3 days in the brush with a canteen and a small knife, and come out the other side neither thinner nor crankier than he had gone in. He could walk through a hotel lobby and leave no one with a memory of him. He could speak Spanish and English without accent in either, and he could speak Portuguese with a Brazilian accent or a Lisboeta accent at his pleasure. He could quote stretches of Marcus Aurelius from memory. He could quote stretches of Heraclitus from memory. He had read the Bible cover to cover twice in Spanish and once in English. He had read the Gospel of John in Greek with a dictionary at his elbow, and Chigurh sitting across from him willing to tell him what a word meant but not why. He could pick a man's pocket and slip the wallet back into the man's pocket with the man none the wiser, and only 10 or 20 seconds of his time stolen. He had not killed anyone, and Chigurh had taught him also that not killing was a skill, and a more precise skill than killing, and a more useful skill than killing, and that most killings of the unprofessional sort were failures of the not killing skill. He grew taller and steadier, and his shoulders broadened a little, and the bones of his small face began to set in their final geometry. He kept the steady green eyes. He kept the scar at his forehead. He kept the wild dark hair, though Chigurh trimmed it for him every few months with a pair of barber's shears. He never grew large. He would never grow large. He would be a small man. He had accepted this very early and built his work around it. In the fall of the year he was 9 years old, a thing happened that surprised the boy, and that did not surprise Chigurh. They were at a roadside diner outside of Las Cruces. They had just sat down. The waitress had just brought them coffee and orange juice. A man at the counter, a thin sunburned man in a baseball cap, was talking too loud to a younger man beside him. The thin man had a knife on his belt, and the thin man was telling the young man what he was going to do with the knife to a woman the thin man had been arguing with the previous night, and what he intended to do to her would have made any decent man stand up. Chigurh was not a decent man, and Chigurh did not stand up. He looked down at his coffee. He turned a sugar packet in his fingers. The boy looked at Chigurh. The boy did not say anything. Chigurh did not look back. The thin man went on. He was loud. The young man beside him was nodding the way a young man nods when he is being told what to think. The boy got up out of the booth. He walked over to the counter. He stopped a few feet from the thin man. He was small, and the thin man did not at first see him. The young man saw him and went quiet. The thin man looked down. The thin man laughed. "What do you want, kid?" The boy did not answer. The thin man laughed again. "Get back to your daddy, kid." The boy looked at him. "You should not talk that way about a woman," the boy said. "You should not talk that way about anyone." The thin man stopped laughing. "What did you say? You should not talk that way. It is bad for you. It is bad for the man next to you. It is bad for the people who can hear you." The thin man went red. He stood up off the stool. He took a step forward. He raised his hand. The boy did not move. Chigurh did not move. The young man on the next stool reached out and got hold of the thin man's belt, and the thin man did not turn, but he did stop. "Don't," the young man said. "Christ, he's a kid." The thin man stood and breathed and looked at the boy. The thin man's hand was still raised. The boy's eyes had not moved. Sit down, the boy said quietly. Eat your eggs. Be a small thing today. You will be other things on other days. You can be a small thing today. The thin man stared. Then in a way he would not have believed possible if he had been told ahead of time, he sat. He picked up his fork. He did not look at the boy. He did not look at the young man. He looked at his eggs. The boy walked back to the booth. He sat down across from Chigurh. Chigurh had not moved through any of this. He held the sugar packet between his thumb and forefinger. You are not afraid of him, Chigurh said. It was not a question. Number. You should have been a little afraid of him. He was twice your size. He had a knife on his belt. He was hot in his blood. I was not afraid. Why? Because I had already decided. If I had not decided, I would have been afraid. The fear is for the moment of deciding. After the deciding, the fear is over. Chigurh nodded. What did you decide? I decided that I would not let him talk that way in front of me about a woman not present to defend herself. I decided that what came after was what came after. I decided that if I had to take a punch, then I would take a punch, and that would be the consequence. I decided that if I had to take a punch and I could not take it, then I would be hurt, and that would also be the consequence. I decided. After deciding, I had no fear because the fear was for the deciding. Chigurh tore open the sugar packet and poured it slowly into his coffee. There's a name for what you just did, he said. What? It is called courage. It is a word people use without knowing what they mean. They use it to mean the absence of fear. The absence of fear is not courage. The absence of fear is a defect mostly. What you just did is courage. It is the action that follows the deciding. It is the thing that happens when a man has chosen and not yet acted. I am not a man. You are working on it, the boy nodded. He picked up the menu. I want pancakes, he said. You will have them. By the time he was 10, he had grown into a kind of small, grave, handsome boy with eyes the green of a thing seen through a green bottle and a face that did not register surprise. He moved through the world in Chigurh's wake the way a small shadow moves, and yet he was not a shadow because shadows do not decide. He decided. He decided what to wear in the morning. He decided when to speak and when not to speak. He decided which men were worth a word and which were not. He decided the lines he was drawing for himself and the lines he was crossing. He decided more and more what Chigurh would do by the small remarks he made at the right times. He had not become Chigurh. He had become something Chigurh had no name for. Chigurh had begun to suspect that the boy was something Chigurh did not have it in him to be, and that this was not a failing in Chigurh but only the difference between two persons. He could live with that. He could live with anything that was true. There was an evening in the early summer of 1991. The boy was 10 and a half. They were sitting on the steps of a small house outside Veracruz, looking out at a thunderhead building far over the Gulf. The sky was the deep gold of late afternoon under thunder. The light made the boy's hair look almost copper. There has been a letter, Chigurh said, a letter to me. Yes, from whom I do not know. The envelope is addressed in green ink. The paper is thick. There is no return address. It was sent to a town called Little Winging in England, an address belonging to people who are dead. It was forwarded once by the postal service to a holding address I keep there. It was forwarded again to a holding address I keep in London. It came down to me by a route that should not exist. There are people in the world who know how to find people. What does it say? I have not opened it. Why? Because it is addressed to you. I have not opened a letter of yours yet. I do not intend to begin. The boy sat for a long time. Show me, he said. Chigurh reached into the inner pocket of his coat and took out a thick yellow-edged envelope and held it out. The boy took it. The envelope was heavy as parchment is heavy. It was addressed in green ink in a careful slanting hand. Mr. H. Potter, the smaller bedroom of the house by the beach at Veracruz, Mexico. The boy looked at the address. How does the address know that? He said. I have wondered the same thing. The boy turned the envelope over. There was a seal on the back of dark red wax. The seal had a coat of arms on it, divided into quarters, with a lion and a snake and a badger and an eagle. He broke the seal with his thumbnail. He took out the letter inside. The letter was on paper of the same thick yellow as the envelope. The hand was the same. He read it slowly. He read it once and then he read it again. He passed it to Chigurh. Chigurh read it. The boy watched him read it. Chigurh laid it down on the step between them. He looked out at the thunderhead over the gulf. A flicker of lightning ran through the cloud, and after some seconds the sound came very far, like the rolling of an old drum in a deep room. Magic, the boy said. So they claim. I have always thought there was something. Yes, the lights when I was angry, the glass that broke. The things that moved when I did not touch them. I thought they were tricks of my eyes, then I thought they were tricks of the world, then I thought they might be something else. They are something else. The boy nodded. School, he said. School, I have read of schools like it in stories. The boy turned the letter over in his hands. What do you want to do? Chigurh said. The boy looked at him. I want to go. You do not have to go. I know I do not have to go. I want to. Why? Because there is something there. There is a thing in me that is not all of what I am. I have known it. I have not asked. I have been thinking that I would let it lie, and that I would be what I have become with you, and that the rest would only be a thing I never used. But that is a refusal. That is the same thing as a coin. Letting a thing lie because I have decided to not see it is the same as letting the coin decide. I do not want to do that. I want to see it. I want to know what I am. I do not want to be only what I have made with you. I want to be all of myself. The making with you is in me forever now. It will not leave me by my going. I will carry it into the place, and the place will not change it. Chigurh nodded slowly. You will be away a long time. Yes, months at a time. Yes, I will go on with the work. Yes, you will come back. I will come back. You will be in a place I cannot follow. I do not know that you cannot follow. The letter said nothing of fathers. It said nothing of guardians either. Only the school. Only what they offer. We do not have to give them anything. We do not have to tell them anything that is ours. We can be the figure they cannot see clearly. We can keep what we have. I can go and learn what they have to teach and bring it back, and come and go from it, like work. Like any other work, Chigurh looked at the boy for a long time. He looked at him the way a man looks at his own work after long years to see whether it is held. It is held. All right, he said. We will go to England. The boy nodded once. The thunderhead over the gulf rolled, and the first of the rain came down on the steps and on the paper of the letter, and the green ink ran a little and steadied. The boy folded the letter and slid it back into the envelope and put the envelope inside his shirt against his chest, and they went into the house. Chapter for the letter. The second letter came 8 days after the first. It came to the small house outside Veracruz by the same impossible route. The boy was on the porch with a paperback of the Confessions of Augustine when the postman came up the lane on his bicycle and rang the bell and looked at the boy without recognition, and then looked at the boy again, and then looked at the envelope in his hand and back at the boy. The boy walked down the steps and across the dry yard. The postman handed over the envelope without speaking. The envelope was the same paper as the first. It was addressed in the same green ink. It said, Mr. H. Potter, the front porch of the small house outside Veracruz, etc. The postman touched his cap and rode away. Inside the second letter was an itinerary and the address of an inn in London and a list of supplies. The list was several pages. The list included a wand. The list included a cauldron. The list included parchment. Chigurh read the list twice. You must go to London, he said. I have a passport. I have a passport for you. We will take that one. When 3 weeks before term, there is a place mentioned, Diagon Alley. It is in London. We will go. Will you come with me to the place? I will come with you everywhere. The boy looked at his hands. What will you be in this place? I will be a quiet man with an unusual haircut, Chigurh said. The boy smiled. It was the small interior smile he had grown into, the smile of a person who is permitted very little expression and who has therefore made each one count. The smile lived almost entirely in the corners of the mouth. You will not be welcome there, the boy said. You are too still for them. You are too other for them. I will be a man on holiday. I will have a coat. I will speak when spoken to. I will be paid little attention because I have a way of attracting little attention. You also have a way of attracting much attention if you wish to. I will not wish to. All right. They left on a Tuesday. They flew from Mexico City to Madrid and from Madrid to Heathrow. The boy carried a small canvas duffel, and the pearl-handled knife was in the inner pocket of his jacket because they had checked the duffel through. Chigurh carried a brown leather satchel and a coat folded over one arm. They cleared customs at Heathrow without incident. A small dark woman at the desk looked at Chigurh's passport and at his face and at the boy's passport and at the boy and back at Chigurh and stamped them through. Chigurh had stood in a very precise way at her desk that had made her wish to be done with him in the shortest interval permitted by her employer. She would not remember the encounter. They took a black cab into central London. The driver took them by way of Knightsbridge, and they came up onto Charing Cross Road and stopped before a building that was older than the buildings on either side of it, and that had a small dark sign over its door and that the driver did not look at when he was paid. He pulled away from the curb and was gone. The sign on the door was in worn gilt letters and said The Leaky Cauldron. You will see this place, Chigurh said. Yes, most people will not see it, I gathered. You will be in a country I cannot see. I have eyes, the boy said. I will lend them to you. Chigurh nodded. They went in. The bar was low and dark, and there were people in cloaks at small tables, and a man behind the bar with a face like a soft potato who was wiping a glass with a rag that had been wiping glasses since before the boy had been born. The murmur of the room continued for a moment, and then it dropped. Heads turned. A small woman in lavender robes covered her mouth with her hand. A young man pulled his hood up. A red-faced wizard nudged his neighbor and pointed at the boy's forehead, and the neighbor looked, and the neighbor's mouth opened. The boy felt the regard of the room settle on him. He did not look at any of them. He looked at the man behind the bar. Excuse me, he said in a clear voice. Looking for the entrance to Diagon Alley. The man behind the bar set down his glass and his rag. Bless me, he said. Bless me, is it? Bless me, you are. He cleared his throat. Welcome, Mr. Potter. Welcome back to. He looked at Chigurh. To us, he said, and trailed off. He looked at the boy again. He looked at the scar. His own eyes filled. Tom the publican was a man given to feeling, and he had been given to it for 60 years, and he was not going to stop today. The boy looked at him. We have an errand, the boy said politely. We do not have a great deal of time. Is there a way through? Yes, said Tom. Yes, of course. Oh my word. He came out from behind the bar. The The room had gone almost silent. Tom led them across the floor and through a doorway in the back into a small courtyard with a brick wall and bins. He took a long, thin stick from inside his apron and he tapped the bricks in a small pattern, and the wall began to slide and to fold itself back upon itself in a manner that was geometric and impossible, and that the boy considered with great interest, and that Chigurh considered with no expression at all. An arched opening appeared, and through the arched opening was a narrow cobbled street curving away and lined on both sides with shops whose signs hung in heavy iron brackets, and over which small flags moved in a wind that did not seem to belong to London. "There you are," said Tom. "Diagon Alley. Mind how you go, Mr. Potter." He hesitated. The companion, sir, is a friend," the boy said. Of course, of course." He had not stopped looking from the boy to the man and back again, as if trying to set them in proportion. Chigurh inclined his head once to the publican. The publican stepped back without intending to. Chigurh and the boy stepped through the arch into Diagon Alley. The wall folded itself back behind them. The crowd in the alley was a crowd of cloaks and robes and pointed hats and tall, thin children with parents holding their hands. There were owls in cages in a shop window. There were brooms hung in racks in another. There was a great white building at the end of the alley with bronze doors that the boy saw and noted as the bank Chigurh had spoken of. There was a smell of melted candle and brimstone and roasting nuts. The boy turned to look at Chigurh. "What do you see?" Chigurh said. The boy thought. "I see a place that runs on a principle I do not yet understand," he said. "I see commerce, and I see craft, and I see custom. I see a place that thinks of itself as small even though it is not small. I see a place that does not know it has a stranger in it. They have looked at me because I am a name to them. They have not looked at you. You are far stranger than I am, and they have not looked at you. They are not careful in the way I am careful. That is interesting. That is something to remember. It is." The boy looked at Chigurh again. "You have walked into many strange places," he said. "Yes, this is the strangest. It is novel." The boy nodded. "To the bank first," Chigurh said. "Yes." They walked the alley. The boy walked a half step behind Chigurh and to his right and a little to one side, and Chigurh did not have to instruct him on the geometry. They walked the way they had walked through hotel lobbies and through the inland customs in San Antonio and through restaurants in Reynosa. They were a unit. They were a small two-person formation. People parted for them without quite knowing why. Gringotts was operated, the boy saw, by a species of creature he had never seen before and which the letter had named goblins, and which he found neither alarming nor charming, only interesting. He went up the marble stairs to a counter and put down the small brass key that had come in the second envelope. "I am to withdraw from my vault," he said. The goblin looked up. The goblin's eyes were small and very black. "Name Harry Potter." The goblin's small black eyes moved very slightly. They moved to the man behind the boy. The man behind the boy did not move. The goblin looked back at the boy. Identification. The boy reached into his shirt and took out the letter with the green ink. The goblin examined it. The goblin compared the boy to a small card he produced from beneath the counter. The goblin held the key up and examined it. The goblin set it down. "Vault 712, the goblin said. "Griffith will take you." Another goblin came forward. "I will accompany him," Chigurh said. The goblin Griffith looked up. The goblin looked at Chigurh. The goblin looked at the boy. The boy nodded slightly. "This way." They went down. They went down in a small iron cart through a series of tunnels which were lit by torches that smelled of pitch and burned without smoke. The cart traveled at a speed that pleased the boy. Chigurh observed the speed and the angle of descent and was silent. Griffith stopped the cart at vault 712 and opened the great iron door with the key, and inside was more gold than the boy had ever seen in his life, in tidy heaped columns and stacks, and a small pile of silver and a smaller pile of bronze. "These are mine," the boy said. "Yes," said Griffith. "They are." The boy looked at the gold for a long moment. "Who put them here?" "That is in the records." "Records may be requested. I would like to request." "Records take some time. They will be at the desk on your way out." "All right." The boy took a leather pouch from his pocket and filled it with gold from the column. He took a smaller pouch and filled it with silver. He took a third with bronze. He left 90% of the gold and almost all of the silver and the bronze in the vault. Griffith locked the door behind them, and they took the cart back up. In the bank's records office, a clerk goblin produced a piece of parchment that bore the names of the boy's father and his mother and a small column of dates of deposits made many years ago. The boy folded the parchment and put it inside his shirt with the letter. "So I had parents," he said quietly. "As we go back up, you knew you had parents. I have not known their names. I have not asked. Why, it was not the work." Chigurh did not answer. "Was it not the work?" the boy said. "It was not the work," Chigurh said. "It is the boy's work. I will not interfere with the boy's work." They came up to the lobby and out of the bank and into the alley. "Where now?" Chigurh said. "The wand," the boy said. The wand shop was a narrow shop with a peeling gold sign, and a window with a single wand on a faded purple cushion. A bell rang very softly when they entered. The shop smelled of cedar and old paper, and a third thing the boy did not have a name for, like dust that was older than the dust of ordinary shops. Tall narrow shelves rose to the ceiling, packed with small narrow boxes. An old man came out from between the shelves with the noiseless step of one who has walked among these objects for 60 years. The man's eyes were the color of moons. "Mr. Potter," he said, "I wondered when I should see you. It seems only yesterday your mother and father were in here buying their first wands." The boy waited. "Yes," said the old man. "Yes, indeed. Yes, I remember every wand I have sold, every single one." He looked at the boy. Then he looked with a slow great care at Chigurh standing behind the boy with his hands in the pockets of his coat. The old man's eyes lingered. "Sir," he said. "Mr. Ollivander," Chigurh said. He had read the name on the sign. It was the only word he would speak in the shop. "You have a stillness about you," said the old man, "that I rarely meet in those who are not." He let the sentence hang. He turned back to the boy with a flicker of effort. "Hold out your wand arm, Mr. Potter." "Either," the boy said. "Either. I am both." The old man's eyebrows rose. "I see." I see? Yes, let us begin." He brought down boxes. He had the boy take a wand, lift it, give it a small swish, and on each occasion the wand was almost immediately removed from his hand before anything could happen. The old man muttered to himself. He brought down more boxes. The boy tried a wand of holly and one of beech and one of oak and one of cherry and one of walnut, and on each of these the old man's face moved in a small dissatisfaction, and the boy felt nothing in his hand but a polished stick. The old man stopped. He looked at the boy. He looked at the scar. He looked at the man behind the boy. He looked back at the boy. "There is one wand that has been waiting for you for almost a century, Mr. Potter," the old man said. "It is in a box at the back. The wand is the brother of another wand. I should very much have liked to give you that wand. I think you would have made a very interesting thing of it. Why have you not?" the boy said. The old man tilted his head a fraction. "I had pulled the box," he said. "I had brought it to the counter. I had stopped to look at you. I have not handed it across. I have considered. I think now that I will not." The boy was patient. "What changed your mind?" he said. The old man looked at the boy with the moon eyes for a long time. "Wands," said Ollivander, "do not choose only the boy. They also choose the road. There are wands that wish to walk a certain road. The wand whose brother I had pulled, I think, would have wished to walk the road that wand has already walked. It would have wished to make you walk it. You are not walking that road. I see you not walking it." So he turned. He went back into the shelves. He was gone for some moments. He came back carrying a different box. It was paler than the others, and the box was slightly worn at one corner. "Cypress," he said. "Cypress and dragon heartstring, 12 inches and 3/4, springy." The boy took the wand from him. "It is rare to find one whose wand is cypress," Ollivander said. "They are the wands of those who are willing to face their deaths, those who would walk into the smoke and the dark and the cold for the sake of another. I have seen perhaps 4 cypress wand bearers in my career. Each of them died for someone. Each of them did so on purpose. Each of them did so well." The boy did not move. "This one wishes to walk that road," the old man said. "It has been waiting for someone to walk it. It has been waiting a long time. Give it a try, Mr. Potter." The boy raised the wand. He brought it down very slightly. The wand grew warm in his hand. A faint pale light moved along its length and was gone. The shop smelled briefly of pine smoke and salt. "Yes," said Ollivander. "Yes." The boy lowered the wand. He looked at it. He looked at the old man. "I am willing to face my death," he said. "I see that. I am also willing to face the deaths of others," the boy said. The old man's eyes glittered very faintly. "Yes," he said. "I see that also." The boy paid for the wand in gold coins from his pouch. The old man wrapped the wand in brown paper and tied it with a string and handed it across the counter. The boy slipped it into his coat. He inclined his head to the old man. Chigurh inclined his head also. They stepped out into the alley. "The other wand," the boy said. "The wand the old man almost gave you." "Yes, we will not learn its story today. Number some other day." "Yes." They walked on. They went to a shop for robes, and the boy was fitted in black school robes by a small witch who asked him almost no questions because he had answered her opening questions with such quiet certainty that she could not think of further ones. They went to a shop for parchment and a shop for ink and a shop for quills and a shop for a leather satchel and a brass-bound trunk to be sent on. They went to the apothecary where the boy bought scales and a brass cauldron and the basic ingredients in small dark jars that smelled of moss and ammonia and lavender. They bought books. They bought the Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, and a Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, and 1,000 Magical Herbs and Fungi and Magical Theory by Adalbert Waffling, and a History of Magic by a man called Bagshot. The boy took up the books with interest. Chigurh paid without expression. They came at last to the bookshop's door and stood out in the street. The light was beginning to slant. Pigeons that did not seem to belong to London were on a roof eating something. "There is one more thing," Chigurh said. "What you will require a way of communicating from the school. The letter mentioned owl. Yes, an owl. I do not need an owl, the boy said. I will write. I will use a normal post when I am in the village. You will get an owl. It is a thing children of this place do. You will do as the children do where the children are. You will not stand out. The boy considered this. He nodded. They went to a shop of owls. The shop smelled of feathers and droppings. The owls slept along the rafters in tidy gray and white and brown ranks. The shopkeeper was a thin old man who wore tinted spectacles even indoors. The boy walked the length of the shop slowly. He looked at every owl. The owls did not look at him. There was an owl at the far end who looked at him. She was a snow-white owl with golden eyes. She looked at him steadily. He looked at her. He stopped in front of her perch. She did not move except for one small tilt of the head. This one, the boy said. She's a fine owl, the shopkeeper said. Snowy owls are. They are very particular. They do not work for just anyone. Are you sure? Yes, the boy said. He paid for her. The shopkeeper produced a cage. The boy declined the cage. He said he would carry her on his arm. He held out his arm. The owl stepped onto it. The shopkeeper made a small, surprised sound. The boy walked out of the shop with her on his arm and Chigurh behind him. Out in the alley, people looked at the boy with the white owl on his arm and looked away. What will you name her? Chigurh said. I will think about it. Think, I will think. They walked back up the alley. The shadows had grown longer. The shops were beginning to close. The boy paused at a shop he had not stopped at before. It was a narrow, dark shop with a sign that said, Quality Quidditch Supplies. The window had brooms. He looked at the brooms for a long moment and looked away. Not yet, he said to himself. What a thing they have here. A game. I read about it in the book. People fly on the brooms. Yes. I would like to learn it. I will not buy a broom today. We will see if the place is the kind of place I belong to. That is wise. They came at last back to the arch and threw it into the courtyard of the leaky cauldron and back into the bar. The bar had filled. A small applause began when the boy entered. He inclined his head once and walked through it without expression and out the front door, and Chigurh followed him. In the street outside, Chigurh hailed a cab. The boy slept on the cab ride back to the hotel. The owl rode on the seat between them in her cage, which had after all been included for free. The boy slept upright with his head against the glass. Chigurh did not speak. The driver did not speak. The owl watched the lights of London go past with her great golden eyes. In the hotel room, the boy sat on the edge of the bed and unwrapped the wand and held it. He held it for some time. He turned it in his fingers. He did not try a spell. He did not yet know any spells. He laid the wand on the bedside table and looked at it. It chose me, he said quietly. You chose it back, Chigurh said. He was at the table cleaning the bolt pistol again, though it did not need cleaning. He was cleaning it because his hands required something to do. I chose it back. That is the only kind of choosing that means anything. The boy nodded. He looked at the wand for some time more. Chigurh, he said, yes. What if the place expects something of me that I do not wish to give? Then you do not give it. What if they pressure me? You are practiced at pressure. I am. What if they try to make me into one of them? They will. That is what schools do. That is what teachers do. That is what the other children do. They make each other. The making is not always intentional. The making is sometimes only the rubbing of one person against another until both are smoother. You will be rubbed at. You will smooth in some places and not in others. The places that smooth will be the places that are agreeable to the rubbing. The places that do not smooth are places of yours that you have set against the rubbing. We have set many places. They are set. They will not smooth. The boy nodded. What if I become one of them? He looked at Chigurh. You will not. How do you know? I know how. You have my training. You have your training. You have your own training that I did not give you and that I do not understand. You have a thing in you that was there before me and that I have not been able to name. It is the thing that said no to the coin in the cupboard. It is the thing that walked across the diner to the loud man in Law's Cruces. It is the thing that picked the cypress wand. The thing does not change. Thing only finds new clothes. They will give it new clothes. The thing under the clothes will still be the thing. The boy nodded. He picked up the wand again. He held it lightly. He raised it. He brought it down in a small arc that he had not been taught to make and that he did not think about. A small pale light ran the length of the wand and faded. The owl on the desk made a small soft sound. Hedwig, the boy said. What, her name? Hedwig. Where does the name come from? It is in a book. I read it years ago. A book of saints. I have always liked it. It is a good name. Yes. He went to bed. He slept early. He slept long. Chigurh sat at the table at the window and watched the lights of London move on the river and did not sleep. In the morning they went to King's Cross. The train was on a platform that no one had told the boy how to reach. The letter had said only platform 9 3/4. The boy stood between platform 9 and platform 10 and considered the small brick pillar that stood between them. He observed the people. He observed a tall woman in plain robes hurrying through the brick with a child and a luggage trolley. He observed several others. He turned to Chigurh. I see how it is done, he said. So do I, Chigurh said. You should not come through. I had not intended to. The boy nodded. He held out his hand. The owl was in her cage on a trolley with his trunk. He held out his hand to Chigurh. I will write to you, he said. I will write back. Use Hedwig. The owl will find me. I have read the book. The boy nodded. Chigurh took the boy's small hand in his own. They shook hands once. The hand was small in Chigurh's hand the way a tool of fine work is small in the hand of a man whose hand has done many large works. I will see you at Christmas, the boy said. You will. Chigurh let go of the hand. The boy turned to the pillar. He pushed his trolley forward. He went through. The pillar took him. He came out the other side onto a platform of red brick with a scarlet steam engine standing at it, hissing its great white breath into the high arched ceiling, and a sea of children and parents and trunks and owls and cats all about. He did not pause. He walked the length of the train. He chose a compartment near the back that was empty. He lifted his trunk with the help of an older boy who looked at his scar and then did not look at it. He set Hedwig on the seat across from him. The train began to move. He watched the platform go past. He did not look for Chigurh because Chigurh would not be on the platform. There were 3 feasts on the train, and he was offered a strange yellow candy by a girl with a great deal of bushy hair and a great deal to say. He declined politely. There was a boy with red hair across the way who looked nervous about something, and a boy with pale hair down the corridor who looked nervous about something else. He spoke to none of them. He watched the country move. England in summer light was a country he had never seen, and the green of the fields was a green he had never seen, and the small stone bridges over small dark rivers were a country he had not imagined. When the train pulled into the station at the end of the line in the deep blue of the late evening, a great voice called out across the platform, first years over here." There was a great tall man with a great tall lantern and a beard like a hedge. The boy walked toward the lantern. In a fleet of small boats they went across a black mirror of water, and the castle rose up out of the night above them with its many lit windows. The boy looked at the castle, and the castle looked back at him. A woman in green robes met them at the doors of the castle. She had a tight bun of black hair and a face that meant business. She told the children that they would be sorted into one of 4 houses, and that the houses had names, and that each had a history, and that each was a family, and that points would be earned and lost, and that the cup would be awarded at the end of the year. She delivered this information with the brisk efficiency of a woman who has delivered the same speech many times. The boy listened politely. They were taken into a great hall. The ceiling was the night sky. There were 4 long tables with children and adolescents, and a high table beyond, and at the high table sat the staff. At one end an old man with a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles. He had eyes that twinkled, and the twinkling was the kind of twinkling that intended to look like benevolence, and that intended to be noticed in its intent to look like benevolence. The boy noted the twinkling and the intent and filed both away. At another end, a man in a black robe and a black expression with hair like black water. He looked up when the boy entered, and his face did not change, but something behind his face did, the way the surface of a deep pool changes when something deep within it moves. The boy noted this also. The sorting was a song from an old hat and then a calling of names. Children went up one by one. The hat was placed on each in turn. The hat shouted out a house. "Cheers, the next child, Potter Harry," Professor McGonagall said. The hall went silent. The boy walked up. He sat on the stool. The hat was placed on his head, and the hat slid down over his eyes, and the world went black. A small voice spoke in his ear. "Oh my," said the voice. "Oh my, what have we here? Yes, there is courage, plenty of it. There is a good mind. There is a willingness. There is also something I have not seen in a long time. Something has been done to you. Or you have been done by yourself. There is a hardness. There is a stillness. There is a craft about you, young man. Yes. There is a craft about you that does not belong in any of the houses I have been told to put boys in. Where shall I put you?" "Slytherin," the boy said quietly inside the hat. There was a small pause. "Slytherin," said the hat. "Are you certain? There is bravery enough for Gryffindor. There is wit enough for Ravenclaw. There is goodness enough, I suspect, for Hufflepuff, though it is a goodness of a peculiar kind. I am certain." "Why?" "Because they expect me elsewhere," the boy said. "Because they have decided where I belong, and I have not. Because the man who has trained me has taught me to look at the place the world is herding me toward, and to consider whether that is the place I would have herded myself, and if it is not, to herd myself elsewhere. Because Slytherin is the house of those who choose. The others are the houses of those for whom others have chosen." Said the hat. "You are a bit hard on the other houses." "I am sorry." "You are not." "I am not." The hat made the small interior chuckle of an object that has lived in many heads. "Then it shall be Slytherin." The hall did not cheer at first. The hall did the silence of an entire hall not believing what it has just heard. Then a thin and very surprised cheer started up from the table on the far left, and the boy walked down off the dais and walked the length of the hall and sat down at the far end of the table among children who looked at him as if he had grown a second head and a third. The pale-haired boy from the corridor of the train was at the table also, and looked at him with frank astonishment, and then with a kind of slow-arriving pleasure. At the high table the old man with the silver beard was looking at the boy. His eyes were not twinkling now. The man in the black robes was looking at the boy. The man in the black robes had not closed his mouth all the way. The boy looked at both of them in turn. He inclined his head slightly to each. He turned to face his table. "Pass the potatoes, please," he said in a quiet, steady voice. A girl across from him with sleek black hair stared at him a moment longer, and then she passed the potatoes. Chapter 5 Halloween. The pen. The Slytherin common room was a low-ceilinged room of green light beneath the lake. Lamps in iron brackets gave the green. The furniture was leather and old wood. The portraits on the walls watched without moving. A fire of green flame burned in a stone hearth. The boy laid his trunk at the foot of a four-poster bed in the first-year boys' dormitory and unpacked his things into the small wardrobe in the manner Chigurh had taught him to unpack, with everything in a place in the place known. He set the leather case with the wand on top of the dresser. He set the leather pouch of gold at the back of the inner drawer. He set his notebook and his pencils on the bedside table. He set Hedwig's cage in front of the small high window. He opened the cage. She stepped out onto the sill. She looked at the boy. She looked at the dormitory. She launched out the window into the night and was gone. The pale-haired boy from the train was unpacking a few beds down. He kept glancing at the boy. The boy did not glance back. The pale-haired boy came over. "Draco Malfoy," the pale-haired boy said. He held out a hand. "Harry Potter." "I gathered." The boy took the hand. They shook. The hand was soft and warm, the hand of a boy who had not had to work with his hands. "You did not go to Gryffindor," Draco said. "I did not. I am surprised. People said you would. I do not have to do what people say I will do. I am beginning to see that." He hesitated. "My father will be very pleased." "Why?" "He had concerns about you. He will be relieved you are with us." "I have not yet decided whether I am with anyone," the boy said politely. "I am only in a particular dormitory." "We are in the same dormitory. That is a fact. The rest is to be seen." Draco considered this for a moment longer than he would have considered most sentences spoken to him. "Where did you grow up?" Draco said. "In other places," the boy said. "What does that mean?" "It means that I grew up in places other than this country." "But you are English." "I am." "Where did you live?" "I have lived in many places." "We will be in this dormitory together for some time, Draco. There is no hurry. You will find out what is necessary as it becomes so. Do not be impatient. There are houses in which a man's past is the only currency. This is a house. We will spend our currency at the proper rate." Draco's face moved through several emotions and arrived at a kind of impressed wariness that would set the tone of their acquaintance for a number of years to come. "That is fair," he said. He went back to his unpacking. The boy lay on his bed in the dark after the lights were out. He listened to the breathing of the other boys. He listened to the small movements of the lake against the leaded windows. He took out his wand and laid it on his chest. The wand was cool and lay against him as if it knew where it was. He slept. The lessons began. He took to them the way he had taken to driving. He sat in the back of Charms and the back of Transfiguration and listened. He read ahead. He turned in his work on time and in handwriting that was small and exact. He answered questions when called on with quiet, brief answers. He did not raise his hand. He did not seek attention. He gathered information. He noted who the teachers were and how each of them taught and how each of them ran a classroom and which of them paid attention and which did not. He noted who the other students were and how they spoke and what they cared about and what they were afraid of. He noted the man in the black robes who taught potions. The man in the black robes hated him. The boy understood this in the first lesson. The man stood at the front of the classroom and made his speech about the subtle science and exact art of potion making, the slow simmer, the bottling of glory and the brewing of fame, and he stopped mid-sentence at the boy's desk and asked the boy a question about powdered root of asphodel that no first-year student should have been able to answer. The boy considered the question with no expression and answered it. The man asked another. The boy answered it. The man asked a third. The boy answered it. The man looked at him for a long moment with his mouth a thin, tight line. The man's hatred of him was a fact in the room as much as the wood of the desks and the stone of the walls. The boy did not respond to it. The hatred was not aimed at him as a person. It was aimed at a thing the boy could see only the back of, an old grievance that lived somewhere behind the man's face and was now wearing the boy's likeness for company. The boy noted this. He filed it. He turned his attention to the cauldron and did the work. He was good at potions. He had been a careful measurer of substances for years. He cut his ginger root in even slices. He took the heat down at the moment the recipe required and not before and not after. He paid attention to the smell. The man in the black robes circled the room and stopped at his cauldron and looked. The man said nothing. He moved on. The boy noted that also. He was good at charms too. The small wizened professor on his stack of books read out the boy's name and the boy stood and gave his answer and sat. He was good at transfiguration. The small severe witch in green who had met them at the door looked at the boy on the first day, and from the first day looked at him with a careful interest that did not waver and that the boy felt without acknowledging. He was good at history of magic, though there was no one to be good at it for. The ghost who taught it droned on and the class slept around him and the boy read the textbook on his own and learned. He was good at herbology, where the squat, cheerful woman with the dirt under her nails set him to mandrake care and tomato pruning, and praised him in a forthright way that he did not entirely know what to do with and which he did not mind. He was very good at defense against the dark arts. The teacher of defense against the dark arts was a thin, nervous man in a purple turban who stammered and who twitched and who carried about him a smell of garlic so heavy that some of the children laughed about it. The boy did not laugh. The boy on the first day of defense against the dark arts walked into the classroom, and the small bell in his blood that he had not known he carried began to ring as it had rung once before in a cupboard in Privet Drive. The man in the turban looked up. The man in the turban's eyes met the boy's eyes for 1/2 second, and the boy saw a thing behind them that was not a man and that was looking at him. The scar at his forehead, the small, thin lightning, gave a sudden warm, sharp throb that he had felt before only in faint suggestions and that now woke for the first time properly. He paused in the doorway only a fraction of a second. He went to his seat. He sat. He took out his quill and parchment. He did not look back at the man. In the dormitory that night he wrote a letter to Chigurh. He wrote it in cipher, the cipher they had agreed on. The cipher was not a difficult one, but it was good enough for a postal owl. The letter said, "There is a man here whose head contains another man. The other man is watching me. The other man knew my mother and father. I will learn more. I am not in danger today." He tied the letter to Hedwig's leg. She regarded him with the great golden eyes. "Mexico," he said. "Cantina del Sol, 2nd floor, El Paso, or wherever he is. You will find him." She took the letter out the window. He watched her go. 3 days later he had her back with a small leather tube tied to her leg. Inside the tube was a single sheet of paper. The hand was Chigurh's, very small and very precise. "I have been reading. The man may be possessed. There is a thing in this country called possession that occurs by means of dark magic. The thing inside the man may be a thing called Voldemort. The thing called Voldemort was a wizard who killed your father and your mother, and tried to kill you when you were a year and 3 months old. The killing curse rebounded from you. The mark on your forehead is the place of the rebound. I have read this in books. I have purchased a number of books in the second-hand wizarding district of London. I have a great deal of reading to do. You will be patient. You will not engage. You will gather. You will wait. We will plan." The boy read the letter twice. He burned it in the green fire in the common room. He nodded once to himself. He spent the next 2 months gathering and waiting. He sat in classes. He learned. He moved through the corridors with the small, even step of a person who has been taught how to move through corridors. He took meals in the great hall. He spoke politely to those who spoke to him. He gathered the politics of the school the way a careful spy gathers the politics of a city. He noted who the old man with the silver beard, the headmaster, made conversation with and who he avoided. He noted the moments the headmaster looked at him across the hall. He met those looks once or twice with the steady green eyes and inclined his head a fraction and looked away again. The headmaster's twinkle was for the school and was always on. The headmaster's attention was for the boy and was sometimes a small naked thing in a moment between twinkles when the headmaster forgot to maintain the costume. The boy noted those moments. He filed them. He gathered allies after a fashion in his own house. Draco Malfoy he handled by neither rebuffing nor encouraging, by treating the boy as one might treat an unstable acquaintance at the same gym, with cordial nods and brief exchanges and a careful absence of obligation. Draco found this almost magnetic. There were other children in Slytherin. A small dark girl named Pansy, who watched him sometimes from across the common room with a frank curiosity, and a large slow boy named Crabbe who attached himself like a stray dog to Draco and never spoke to the boy at all, and a thin clever girl named Daphne who in the first week pulled him aside in the corridor and asked him bluntly if he was going to be useful to the house, and the boy had told her he intended to be useful to himself, and that the house would benefit incidentally. And she had laughed once and gone away, and that had been the end of the conversation. There was also a tall, thin boy with bony shoulders named Theodore Knott who watched the boy at meals with a peculiar steady interest that the boy returned. They had not yet spoken. They would speak when there was a reason. He gathered acquaintances outside his house in small, careful doses. The girl with the bushy hair from the train was in Gryffindor. Her name was Hermione Granger. She was loud and confident and very quick. She was disliked by most of her own house. She tried to speak with him in the library on the 3rd week of term about the 7th footnote in the History of Magic textbook, and he had answered her question, and then he had answered the next, and then he had asked her a question about something else, and they had spent 40 minutes at a table together pulling down books and going back and forth. She was startled to find that she was not annoying to him. He was startled to find that he liked her. He had not had occasion to like people his own age in his life so far. The sensation was strange. He filed it. He looked forward to the next time she would corner him in the library. which was the following Tuesday, and which was followed by Thursday, and a small steady ritual was thereby instituted between them which neither of them named. He spoke with the red-haired boy from the train, who was a Weasley and whose name was Ron, and who could not at first decide whether he hated the boy for being in Slytherin or worshipped him for being the boy who lived. The boy treated him with the same cordial absence of obligation as he treated Draco. They had a few conversations of mutual probing. The red-haired boy was simple and honest, and the boy concluded after some weeks that this boy was perhaps a person he could be friends with if circumstance permitted. Circumstance did not yet permit. The boy noted the possibility and set it aside. He spoke also with the woman in the green robes, Professor McGonagall, after a transfiguration lesson in the 4th week of term. She had detained him after class. She had folded her hands on her desk. "Mr. Potter," she said. "May I ask you a personal question?" "You may, Professor. Where did you grow up?" "In a number of places," the boy said. "Could you be more particular?" "I was raised by a guardian, Professor. We traveled. I lived for some years in Mexico, some in the United States, some in other countries. I came to England occasionally. We never lived in England for very long at a time." "Your guardian, is he a wizard?" "Number A muggle." "A muggle," the boy agreed politely after a brief pause in which he weighed the word and decided that it would do for now. Professor McGonagall was silent for a moment. "You were not raised by your aunt and uncle," she said. "No," the boy said. She looked at him. He looked back at her with the steady green eyes. "I see," she said. The boy waited. "There were certain expectations," she said, "about the arrangement of your childhood. They have not been met. I will need to discuss the matter with the headmaster." "I expect you will," the boy said. "Tell him as much or as little as you wish. I will answer questions as I think wise. I am not under any obligation to answer all of them." She tilted her head. "You are an interesting young man, Mr. Potter." "Thank you, Professor. You may go." He went. He felt her watching the back of him until the door closed. He did not hear from the headmaster about the matter for some weeks. The headmaster, he noted, watched him a little more often after that. The headmaster did not summon him. The headmaster's twinkle did not waver. The boy noted that the headmaster had decided not to act yet. The boy approved of this decision. The boy was not yet ready to be acted upon. The boy filed this also. In the meantime, he watched the man in the turban. The man in the turban was a poor teacher of defense against the dark arts. The man stammered through his lessons. The man recoiled from any direct question and turned the conversation back upon the textbook. The man was nonetheless dangerous. The boy could see this. The boy could see the thing behind the man's eyes whenever the man looked at him for more than a fraction of a second. The thing was patient. The thing was cataloging him. The thing wanted something from him. The thing did not yet know how to take it. He read every book in the library that mentioned Voldemort. He read every book that mentioned possession. He read every book that mentioned the killing curse. He read books on dark magic. He read books on protection. He noted that most of these books were vague when they were not wrong, but that there was a kernel of useful information in each and that the kernels added up. He wrote to Chigurh. He wrote that the thing inside the man was patient. He wrote that the thing did not yet act because the thing had not yet decided that it could. He wrote that there would be a moment when the thing decided. He wrote that he did not intend to give the thing time. Chigurh wrote back. The letter said only, "When you are ready, signal me." "I will send," the boy understood. He went on with his lessons. He went on with his small ritual of the library on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons with Hermione. He went on with his courtesies in the common room. He went on with his afternoons walking the corridors and noting the doors and the staircases and the routes that did not appear on any map. He memorized the way the moving staircases moved. He memorized the entrances to the secret passages. He memorized the patterns of the patrols. On the 28th of October, Hedwig brought him a small, flat parcel wrapped in oilcloth. He unwrapped it in the dormitory in the dark with the curtains drawn around his bed and a wand light over the package. Inside was a fountain pen. The pen was black and heavy. It was heavier than a fountain pen should be by a little. The barrel was thicker than a fountain pen's would have been by a little. The cap had a slim silver clip. The pen was the kind of pen a careful man might carry in his shirt pocket on a serious day. There was a small folded sheet of paper with it. The hand was Chigurh's. It said, "This is what you asked for. The trigger is the small button at the side of the barrel above the clip. Press it firmly. The bolt advances 1 inch. The bolt is sized for a temple. The seal is good for 2 shots. After that, the canister must be replaced. The pen will write also. Ink is in the cap. The bolt has been transfigured to look like a writing tool by a man I have paid handsomely. The transfiguration is good. It will fool any examination that does not turn the small screw in the barrel. The small screw is concealed beneath the silver clip. Do not turn it unless you intend to be discovered." The boy looked at the pen for some time. He held the pen in his hand. The weight was right. He clipped it to the inside pocket of his school robe over his heart. He slept. The next 2 days he watched the man in the turban from a small distance and made his last preparations. He noted the man's movements in and out of the corridor on the third floor. He noted the place the man kept always to himself, the small office behind the defense classroom. He noted the place the man could be alone in. On the night of Halloween, the great hall was decorated with carved pumpkins floating in the air and bats wheeling overhead, and the feast began at 6. The boy ate carefully. He had eaten before a serious work many times. He ate small portions. He drank water only. He left a bite or two on his plate each round so that he did not pose the impression of a person who had eaten his fill. He listened to the noise of the hall and the laughter of the children and the small subterranean rumble of the staff at the high table. At 7, the man in the turban burst into the hall. "Troll," the man cried in his stammering voice. "Troll in the dungeons." He fell forward against the high table in what looked like a swoon. "Thought you ought to know," he gasped. The hall erupted. The headmaster stood and silenced them with a single raising of his hands. "Prefects, lead your houses to the dormitories. Slytherin will not return to the dungeons. Slytherin will proceed to the antechamber. Staff, with me." The boy stood with the others. He filed out among the Slytherins. As they passed the defense against the dark arts professor on the floor, the man's eyes were on the boy, and the boy looked once into them and saw the thing inside the man looking back at him and saw the small flicker of satisfaction in the thing. The man was lying about the troll. The boy was sure of this. The man had brought the troll into the dungeons himself, or had let it in, or had simply invented its existence. The man wanted everyone busy elsewhere. The man would be using the diversion. The boy peeled off from the group in the second corridor. He did this in the manner Chigurh had taught him to peel off from groups. He fell back. He took the small open door at the right. At the precise moment the prefect at the head of the line turned a corner, he stepped through. He closed the door behind him. He waited. He counted breaths. He heard no one come back for him. He had not been missed. He had not yet been counted. He took the small thin route Chigurh had taught him to take in any building, the route that did not look like a route. He went up and across and around. He came to the third floor corridor. The corridor was deserted. The bats had not come this far up. The lamps in the wall brackets burned without smoke. He stopped outside the door of the defense against the dark arts classroom. He listened. There was no sound from within. He waited. After some minutes, the door opened from inside and the man in the turban came out. The man did not have his stammer. The man was walking with purpose. The man stopped when he saw the boy in the corridor. The man's face went through several expressions and arrived at a kind of slow, careful curiosity. "Mr. Potter," he said. His voice was different. The stammer was gone. The voice was a smooth and rather cultured voice. "I have been waiting," the boy said. "Indeed." The man looked at him. "You should be in your common room," the man said. "I should not. Why have you come?" "To speak with you." The thing behind the man's eyes considered the boy. "You are a curious child," the thing said. "I have a curious life. I have wondered about you a great deal. I have also wondered about you." "You have," said the thing. "Yes, I see now." The thing's mouth made a small motion that was not quite a smile. "There is something behind your eyes," the boy said. "I have been seeing it since the first day of term. It is not the man whose robes you are wearing. I would prefer to speak with the thing behind the eyes." The man's body went very still. After a moment, the man's face changed. It changed the way wax changes when held near a flame. The eyes did not change. The mouth changed. The lines of the face slid into a different arrangement. "You see clearly," the new face said. "For one so young, I have been taught to see." "By whom?" "By the man who raised me." "Who raised you?" The boy did not answer. The thing and the man considered him for a long moment. "What do you want, child?" "I want to ask you something." "What?" "I want to ask you to call a coin." The new face went still. "Call a coin?" "Yes." The face laughed. It was a small, dry laugh, and it was a laugh that the boy had heard before in many small variations from many men. The laugh of a man who has not understood and who has decided to compensate for his lack of understanding with sound. "I am not in the habit of calling coins, child. I know, most people are not. What is the coin?" The boy reached slowly into the side pocket of his robe with his right hand and took out the worn American quarter that Chigurh had sent him with the pen. He held it up. "There is a side with an eagle," he said. "There is a side with a man. The man is dead 200 years. He was a president. He freed himself. Heads or tails? What does the coin decide? It decides who lives." The face laughed again, louder this time. "You have lost your mind, child. It is possible. I see no coin in your hand that can decide who lives. I am not who you think I am. I am older than you can know. I am stronger than you can know. I am behind a body that has prepared this corridor for me with charms you have not seen. There is no coin that can decide who lives between us. There is only the killing curse, which I will pronounce upon you in a moment when I have heard the rest of your absurdity." "That is what I thought you would say," the boy said. "What did you think I would say?" "You said there is no coin that can decide. You said I will pronounce the killing curse when I have heard the rest. You said you said the thing the coin will not let you say. You said I am the engine. What? You are correct. There is no coin. There is only what we decide. There is only what we are. There is only what we do. The coin is a costume the engine wears. I am not in a costume. You are not in a costume. We stand naked in this corridor in this castle, and we look at one another, and one of us will leave and one of us will not. You speak as one older than you are, said the thing. I have been older than I am for some years. I see that. Yes, I see that. The boy moved his left hand to his shirt pocket and removed the fountain pen. I am taking notes, he said. I will write what you say next. You have lost your mind, perhaps. Then write this down, child. Avada. The boy did not let him finish the word. He pressed the small button at the side of the barrel of the pen, and the bolt rod drove forward 1 inch into the temple of the man called Queerness Quirrell. There was the small sound of a hammer striking a board through a thick coat. The eyes of the man went out. The body collapsed. The thing inside the man did not collapse. The thing inside the man rose up out of the body in a thin column of black smoke, and the smoke had a face in it, and the face was the face the boy had been seeing through the man's face for months, and the face was howling without sound. The smoke gathered itself and tried to fly at the boy. The smoke hit the boy in the chest, and the smoke passed through him, and the smoke came out the other side of him, and the smoke wailed and recoiled and gathered itself once more and tried again and again. It could not. The boy stood with his arms a little out at his sides, and the cypress wand in his right hand and the bolt pen in his left, and his green eyes very steady. The smoke battered itself against him 3 times and then fled. It went out a high window. It was gone. The corridor was silent. The boy looked down at the body on the floor. The boy bent and detached the turban. There was a face beneath the turban on the back of the dead man's skull, withered and wrinkled and small, with red eyes. The face was already drying out. The face had gone slack. The boy put the turban back. He did not wish anyone who came upon the body to see what was beneath it without warning. He stood up. He held up the bolt pen and turned the small concealed screw inside the silver clip, and the pen reverted to its original form, the cylinder of black steel with its small rubber grip. He slid it into the inner pocket of his robe, and he buttoned the robe over it. He took the coin in his right hand and slipped it back into the side pocket. He stood for a long moment looking at the body. He had killed a man. He had killed a man, and he had not used a coin. He noted the absence of the coin. He noted what he felt. He felt a small, clear stillness, as a man feels who has stood for an hour in a place he was unsure of and has at last decided that the place is his to stand in. He did not feel triumph. He did not feel guilt. He felt the consequence of his choice arrange itself around him like the air of a room he had just entered. I decided, he said quietly to the corridor. He turned. He walked back the way he had come. He took the small, thin route. He did not encounter anyone. He came back into the antechamber at the precise moment the prefects were being given the all-clear about the troll. He sat down on a bench. He breathed evenly. No one asked where he had been. Draco glanced at him once and looked away. In the dormitory that night he wrote to Chigurh. The letter said, "The pen worked. The thing behind the eyes is loose in the world. It is not gone. I think it will come back. I am not afraid. I will sleep tonight. I will work tomorrow. I have not flipped a coin. I decided." He sent Hedwig with it. He lay in his bed in the dark with the wand on his chest and the bolt pen back in its hiding place and his hand around it. There was a small commotion in the school the next day. A teacher had died. A heart attack, they said, a man with a weak constitution. The headmaster gave a brief speech at breakfast and called for a moment of silence. The boy bowed his head with the rest. The headmaster's eyes moved over the hall and stopped at the Slytherin table and on the boy and rested there for 1/2 second. The boy raised his head when the others raised theirs. He met the headmaster's eyes for 1/2 second and inclined his head a fraction in respect to a colleague lost. The headmaster's eyes did not waver. The boy looked away first in the manner of a polite child looking away from the gaze of his elder and ate his toast. A week later Hedwig brought him back the answer. It was very short. "I am proud of you. We will speak at Christmas." The boy folded the letter twice and burned it in the green fire of the common room. He went to his bed. He slept the dreamless sleep of a man who has done his work. The school went on. There was a brief flurry of investigation into the death of the defense against the dark arts professor. The ministry sent a small dusty wizard with a clipboard who interviewed 3 students at random, none of them the boy, and who pronounced the matter a tragic but unremarkable cardiac event. The headmaster did not contradict him in writing. The school was given a substitute teacher for the remainder of the term, a tweedy older witch from the Department of Magical Education whose chief talents were diction and a great love of quizzes. The class learned little. The boy did not mind. The boy had taught himself the year's curriculum in October. He went to the library on Tuesday and on Thursday as he had always done. Hermione, who had no idea of any of what had happened, met him with her armfuls of books and her small, ambitious eyebrows and her conversation about ancient runes and the 3rd footnote on page 216 of the Standard Charms text. He sat with her. He listened to her. He answered her. After a number of weeks, he became aware that her company was a thing he had begun to look forward to. In the small, careful way he permitted himself such things, and he set this awareness in the back room of his mind in the same drawer where he kept other things he did not yet understand about himself. He found the drawer was beginning to grow full. He noted the fact. He saw the headmaster across the hall in the mornings. The headmaster looked at him sometimes in the unguarded moments between the rest of the day's twinkling. The boy met the looks each time. The boy did not flinch. The headmaster after some weeks began to incline his head a fraction at these meetings, in a manner of careful acknowledgement that no other student would have noticed and that the boy noticed. The boy returned the inclinations. He understood that between them a thing had been said. He understood that the thing had been said without words. He understood that he and the headmaster were now in an acquaintance that did not require speaking, and that was its own peculiar kind of useful, and that would in time become useful in other ways. He filed the development. He set it aside. In early December he received a parcel from Mexico. It was a small heavy parcel wrapped in brown paper and string. Inside was a single book in Spanish, an old leather-bound edition of the Tao Te Ching with a small inscription on the flyleaf in Chigurh's small, precise hand. The inscription said, "For the one who is the coin." The boy read the inscription 3 times. He closed the book. He laid his hand on the cover for a moment. He set the book on his bedside table. The term ended and the boy went home for Christmas. He went by way of London and from London by aircraft to Mexico City, and from Mexico City by jeep across the brown country to the house with the brown dog in the yucca tree. The brown dog raised its head from the dust as the jeep came in and recognized the boy and lay back down. Chigurh was on the porch. The woman with the apron and the knife at her belt was not there. She had not been there in a long time. There was a different woman now. A small, grave woman with iron gray hair who had been hired in the year the boy was 8, and who cooked very well and who did not speak unless asked, and who liked the boy in the silent way of a person who has had children of her own a long time ago and has not had occasion to be of use to them in some years. The boy got out of the jeep. He climbed the steps. He stood in front of Chigurh on the porch. Chigurh looked at him. "You have grown," Chigurh said, "a little." "You have killed, yes, tell me." The boy told him. He told him exactly. He told him every step of the corridor and every word of the exchange and every motion of his hands. He told him about the wraith and how the wraith had struck him 3 times and how each strike had failed. He told him about the body on the floor and the turban replaced. He told him about the small calm stillness after. Chigurh listened without interruption. When the boy was finished, Chigurh sat for a long moment looking out at the brown country. "You did not use the coin. I did not. You used the pen. I used the pen." You spoke to him as if to an equal. "I spoke to him as I would have spoken to anyone in that corridor. Equal does not enter into it. The thing in the man was something. I addressed the something. I did not address it as more than it was or less than it was." Chigurh nodded slowly. "And the wraith? It went out the window. I do not believe it is gone. I believe it will look for another vessel. I believe it will be slow and weak for some time. I believe we will face it again. We will." The boy considered Chigurh. "You said you would stop flipping the coin," he said. "I said I would think about it. You have had 4 months. I have. What have you decided?" Chigurh looked at him. He looked at the boy with the small interior expression that lived in the corners of his eyes more than in his mouth. "I have stopped flipping it," he said. The boy nodded. "I am glad," he said. "I have not stopped because of any single conversation. I have stopped because the coin was an arrangement that fit one shape of life and no longer fits the shape my life has become. When the shape changes, the arrangements must change. The change is not a betrayal of the older arrangement. The change is a maintenance of the principle the arrangement served. The principle was the principle: decide. The coin had been my way of deciding. I have found a better way. The better way is to decide." The boy nodded. "That is good," he said. "That is good." They sat for some time on the porch. The brown dog snored under the yucca. The grave woman came out and set a tray on the small table between them. There was bread and there were 2 glasses of cold horchata. The boy ate the bread and drank the horchata. He had not had horchata in 5 months. It was the taste of a country he had grown up in. He drank it slowly. "I have brought you a thing," Chigurh said. What? Chigurh reached into the pocket of his coat and brought out a small leather case. He set it on the table between them. The boy opened the case. Inside was a small silver chain with a single pistol bolt soldered to it as a pendant. The bolt was worn smooth at one end and very faintly stained at the other. "This was the bolt that ended Vernon," Chigurh said. "I retrieved it from the floor of the front room before we left the house. I have had it cleaned. I have had it mounted. I have considered keeping it. I have decided that it belongs to you." The boy lifted the chain. He held the bolt against the light. The bolt was small in his fingers. He set it down. He looked at Chigurh. "Why, it is the first consequence in the chain of consequences that has led to where we are sitting. The accident was the address on the slip of paper. The consequence was the bolt. Without the bolt, we are not here. I keep the things that began the work I am still doing. This is one of those things. It is yours. You may carry it. You may not. You may leave it in a drawer for a great many years and only take it out occasionally. You may bury it. It is yours. I am only handing it across." The boy slid the chain over his head. The bolt lay against his collarbone under his shirt. He felt it settle. He felt it become a thing he wore. He nodded. "Thank you," he said. Chigurh inclined his head. They spent Christmas Day together at the small house. The grave woman cooked a turkey and beans and a great many dishes that were not Christmas dishes and that were better than Christmas dishes. They ate. They sat on the porch in the evening. Chigurh asked the boy about Hermione. The boy was surprised that Chigurh knew of Hermione. Chigurh did not explain. The boy answered the questions. He answered them well. Chigurh listened. "She will be useful," Chigurh said. "She is already useful. She will be more useful. Treat her as one treats a careful colleague. Do not lie to her. Do not lie to anyone you intend to work with for a long time. Lies have a way of compounding the way interest compounds, and the day comes that you cannot pay the debt. I have not lied to her. You have not told her everything. That is not the same. That is not the same." The boy nodded. He returned to school in January. He carried with him 3 new books, 2 pairs of gloves, the silver chain with the bolt under his shirt, and a small dark wisdom he had brought back from the porch of the house in Mexico and that he had not had at his disposal in November, and that would serve him through the remainder of the year. The remainder of the year was uneventful. There were the usual lessons. There were the usual examinations at the end. He sat his and got the highest marks in his year, though the marks themselves did not particularly matter to him, and he did not display them to anyone or refer to them again. He returned to the porch of the Aegean house in late June with his trunk and his owl. Sirius was not yet a fixture. The headmaster did not summon him in the last week. The headmaster watched him go from a window of the school as the train pulled away, and the headmaster wondered again what he had let walk under his roof for a year. And the headmaster knew, with the careful old certainty he had been trying not to use, that the boy was a thing he would not entirely be able to predict or counsel, and that he had been wrong about a great many of the assumptions he had been making about the boy. And that he would have to start his thinking about the boy from a very different beginning if he wished to do good by him going forward. The headmaster sat down at his desk. The headmaster wrote a private letter to himself in his journal, which he tied closed afterward with a small black ribbon and did not open again for some years. The boy stepped off the train at King's Cross alone. He had told no one to meet him. He walked through the wall in the manner he had walked through the wall in September. He walked across the Muggle station with his trunk on a trolley and his owl in her cage on the trolley beside it. He came out the front entrance of the station into the bright June sunshine of London, and a cab pulled up and a tall, thin man with an unusual haircut leaned across and opened the door. "Chigurh," the boy said. "Get in." The boy got in. The Chapter 6. Years of Iron I. The diary in the summer between his first year and his second. The boy went to Mexico for 3 weeks, and then to a small flat above a shop in Lisbon for a month, and then to a house Chigurh kept for the winter on the dry side of an island in the Aegean. He did his school reading in the mornings on a terrace overlooking the sea. He swam in the afternoons. He shot at clay pigeons over a low stone wall with a pistol Chigurh had brought him as a present, a small flat black Glock chambered in 9mm, which Chigurh said was a present and was also a tool and was therefore to be cared for as both. The boy fired it with great patience and with greater accuracy by the end of the month. In the evenings they read aloud to each other from a small book of Sufi poetry that Chigurh had bought in a market in Istanbul. The poetry was sometimes more than the words. He returned to Hogwarts in September alone on the train and looked at the country going past and thought of how it differed from the country of the Aegean. The country was greener and softer. He was always a little astonished by England. The country looked as if it had never had to be brave. The second year passed slowly. He was a good student. He was a still student. He was treated with a kind of careful diplomacy by his housemates that suited him. The man in the black robes who taught potions still hated him, but they had arrived at a private workable contempt for one another that did not require either of them to expend further energy on the relationship. The headmaster watched him. The headmaster summoned him to his office twice in the course of the year on minor pretexts, and asked him gentle searching questions about his summer and his guardian and his living arrangements, and the boy answered them in the polite, vague way of a child whose family preferred its privacy. And the headmaster smiled and nodded and twinkled and did not press. The boy understood that the headmaster was waiting for an opening the boy was not going to provide. The boy provided no opening. The headmaster made notes after the boy left, but the notes were the notes of a man writing down what he had not been told. There was a great deal of trouble at the school that year. A series of attacks on Muggle-born students, a great deal of nervous gossip, a message in red painted on a wall. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware. The students of Muggle parentage were drawing closer together and looking over their shoulders, and the students of pureblood households were carrying themselves with a smug, barely concealed satisfaction, except for the few who looked sick. The cat of the caretaker was found petrified outside a corridor. A Gryffindor first year was found petrified in a corridor. A Ravenclaw prefect was found petrified outside a library. The school began to think about closing. The boy worked the problem in the way Chigurh had taught him to work problems. He gathered, he observed, he took notes. He went into the library, he read the histories. He read the histories that were not in the school library and that he ordered through Hermione, who knew a great deal more about ordering through second-hand booksellers than a girl of 12 should have known, and who was happy to be of use to him. He spoke to portraits in the corridors. He spoke to the painter of one of the portraits in the corridors who had once known the architect of the dungeons. He went down to the dungeons one Saturday morning before breakfast with a torch and a pry bar and a piece of chalk, and he traced the layout of the lower levels. He did not find the entrance to the chamber. He found marks where the entrance must be, and he noted that the marks were not in the dungeons. The marks were in the plumbing, specifically in the plumbing of a girl's bathroom on the second floor that no one used because the ghost in the bathroom drove people away. The ghost was a young woman who had been killed in that bathroom 50 years before. The boy had read about her. He went to see her on a Wednesday evening after dinner. He did not bring his housemates. He brought a small white flower he had picked outside the greenhouses and he laid it on the sink in front of her. She watched him. "I would like to ask you," the boy said, "what was the last thing you saw before you died?" The ghost stared. "Eyes," she said after a long moment. "Whose eyes?" "I do not know. They were yellow eyes. They were very large." "Where did the eyes come from?" "From the sink," the ghost said. "The middle sink." "The middle sink," she added, "with the snake on the tap." "The snake on the tap was looking at me." The boy looked at the middle sink. He saw the small etching of a snake on one of the taps. He thanked the ghost. He laid another flower on the sink the next morning. He kept laying flowers there once a week through the end of the year. He wrote to Chigurh. He wrote a long letter in cipher. He wrote, "There is a basilisk in the pipes under this castle. There is a thing called a Horcrux that contains a fragment of the soul of the man whose body I was made to vacate last year. The thing is a diary. The diary is being used by someone in the school to release the basilisk. The thing is being used to possess the user. I will find the user. I will destroy the diary. I will destroy the basilisk. I do not need anything from you yet. I will write again." Chigurh wrote back, "Signal me when you need." The boy did not need yet. He worked. He found the diary in February. He found it in the manner he had found other things, by patience. He had been observing the youngest of the Weasley children, a small red-haired girl who had grown thinner and paler over the term and who did not eat at meals and who sometimes did not remember her own name. He noted that she went off alone often. He noted that she carried a small thin black book everywhere with her. He noted that she sometimes whispered to it. He waited. On a Tuesday afternoon, he caught her alone in an unused classroom and he closed the door behind him very gently and he stood with his back to it. She turned and saw him. The book was open on a desk in front of her. She had been writing in it. Her face was a face that was several days behind sleep. Her hands were the hands of a child who had not been keeping them warm. "Ginny," the boy said quietly, "may I see your book?" Her eyes flickered. "It is mine," she said. Her voice was not quite hers. It was a younger voice than her voice should have been and also an older one. "I will give it back," the boy said. "I would only like to see it for a moment." She did not move. He walked across the classroom. He did not hurry. He stood at the desk. He looked at the book. He looked at her. "Ginny," he said again. "Step away from the book, please." She blinked. Her eyes cleared a little. Her face, the face under the face, came back for one moment. Her own mouth said, "Please." He nodded. She stepped back from the desk. He took the bolt pen out of his inner pocket. He held it up where she could see. He set the muzzle against the cover of the diary. He pressed the small button. There was the small sound of a hammer striking a board through a thick coat. The bolt drove through the leather cover and through the pages and through the back cover. A great black gout of ink shot up out of the binding and splattered the desk and the wall. The ink boiled. The pages began to scream in a thin, high, inhuman tone that came from inside the book and not from any audible mouth. The book convulsed on the desk for some seconds and then it lay still. The screaming faded. Black liquid ran out of the spine and pooled and steamed and dried. The little girl swayed on her feet. The boy caught her elbow and steadied her. She looked up at him. Her eyes were her own. "You found me," she whispered. "I was looking. I could not stop." "You did not have to stop. I have stopped it for you." She began to cry. He let her cry. He did not say it would be all right, because in his experience saying that things would be all right was a thing one said to oneself out of cowardice, and rarely a thing useful to the person crying. He let her cry on him. After a while he gave her his pocket handkerchief. "You will need to tell someone," he said. "You will need to tell your head of house. You will tell her what happened. You will not tell her about me. You will say you found the book in the bathroom on the second floor. You will say it had been writing to you. You will say it had asked you to do certain things. You will say you brought it here today and you stabbed it with the leg of a chair and the leg broke and the book died. You will say what you say, I will not be in the story. You understand? Why? She said. Because I do not wish to be in the story, he said. Why? Because I am not yet at the age when being in the story is useful to me. She nodded slowly. You will go, he said, and tell. You will be in trouble. The trouble will be brief. Your family will love you the rest of their lives. They will love you more for the trouble. Now go. She went. She closed the door behind her. The door clicked shut. He stood for a moment with the dead diary on the desk. He took the bolt pen and reseated the canister. He turned the screw. The pen reverted. He clipped it inside his robe over his heart. He pulled the diary toward him with the corner of his sleeve and slid it inside a cloth and slid the cloth inside his bag. He took the bag with him. He left the rooms. He walked to the dungeons. He went to the common room. He took the bag up to his dormitory. He took the dead diary out. He looked at it. The leather had begun to flake. The pages within it had begun to crumble. He went down to the lake that evening and threw the diary into the deep water. The next morning a great deal of school gossip was about the Weasley girl and her confession and her dramatic story and the broken chair leg. The boy noted with satisfaction that no one mentioned the corridor. The headmaster summoned the girl. The headmaster summoned her father. The headmaster told the girl she had done a brave thing and a good thing and a wise thing in coming forward. The girl had begun to believe a part of her own story. The boy did not begrudge her this. It was kinder than the alternative. The petrified students were eventually revived by Mandrake Draft. The basilisk did not come out again. The boy was not sure why. He suspected the basilisk had needed the diary's instruction to know who to come out for and that the dead diary could no longer instruct. He did not investigate further. He set the question aside. He had told Chigurh he would destroy the basilisk. He had not. The basilisk was still under the castle. He had judged the cost-benefit, and the basilisk had been put off for some other year when he was more grown and more equipped, and when the diversion of removing it could be afforded. He wrote to Chigurh and told him this. Chigurh wrote back, "It is permitted to defer." Aye. The trial the summer between second and third year was different. They did not travel. They stayed in the small house on the dry island in the Aegean for the full 3 months. Chigurh wished to be near the boy because Chigurh had had a conversation with himself about Sirius Black. Sirius Black, the boy had read in the papers, was a wizard who had escaped from a wizard prison called Azkaban. The Daily Prophet had carried photographs of his face for several weeks. He had murdered, the papers said, 13 people on a London street, 12 muggles and 1 wizard with a single curse. He had been a friend of the boy's father. He had been the boy's godfather. He had given his master's enemies, the boy's parents, to be killed by their enemy. And he had then murdered the friend who had tried to stop him, a friend called Pettigrew, on the street 12 years ago. The boy considered this story. He considered it from the angle the papers asked him to consider it from. He considered it from other angles. He noted that the story did not fit. He noted that the story had several pieces that should not exist together. A man who would have given his parents to be killed by their enemy would not, 12 years later, escape from a fortress prison after the enemy had been already dead for 12 years. A man who killed 12 muggles in the street to silence a witness was a man who had something to lose by being identified. A man who had everything to lose had no reason to identify himself by killing on a public street. The story was a story that had been told once and that no one had bothered to investigate because the convict had been convenient and the case had been closed. The boy noted these things. He went to Chigurh. "I want you to look into something for me," he said. "What?" He told Chigurh about Sirius Black. He told Chigurh the story as the papers told it. He told Chigurh the angles he had noticed did not fit. Chigurh listened with his hands in his pockets and looked out at the sea. "You are saying," he said, "that this man may not have done what he is said to have done. I am saying the story does not add. I am saying I do not know what the truth is. I am saying I would like to know. He was my parents' friend. He was my godfather. He may have betrayed them. He may not have. The papers say he has. The papers also said the diary was a chair leg. The papers say a great many things. I am no longer in the habit of believing the papers without checking." Chigurh nodded. "I will look." It took Chigurh 6 weeks. He used routes the boy did not know about and asked questions of people the boy would never meet and read documents that had not been meant to be read. He came back to the boy in the small kitchen of the small house on the dry island on a Saturday morning in August with a small leather folder under his arm. "The man called Sirius Black is innocent," Chigurh said. The boy waited. "The man whose body was found on the street 12 years ago was not the wizard Pettigrew," Chigurh said. "Pettigrew did not die. Pettigrew killed the muggles. Pettigrew framed Black. Pettigrew lives. He has lived as a rat in the household of a wizarding family these 12 years. The family is the family of the Weasleys. The rat has been the pet of one of the younger children." The boy considered this. "Where is the rat now?" "In the household. The records of the Weasleys' pets have been kept by the children for over a decade. The records list the rat's lifespan. The rat is older than rats live. The rat is an animagus, an unregistered animagus, and his animagus form is a rat with a missing toe. The toe was the toe found on the street that was used to convict Black. The boy nodded. Sirius Black escaped from Azkaban, Chigurh said, because Sirius Black saw the photograph of the rat in the paper the previous summer. The photograph was a photograph of the Weasley family in Egypt. The rat was on a child's shoulder. Sirius Black recognized the rat. Sirius Black has been hunting the rat. The rat is at large. Black is at large. The Ministry of Magic is hunting Black. No one is hunting the rat. How do you know this? The boy said. I have spoken to a person. What person? A man at the ministry whose name does not matter. A man whose silence was purchased and whose information was purchased separately so as to be sure the two had not been combined. What is the price? The price is to be paid in time. The price will be paid. The boy considered this for some time. So my godfather is innocent and is being hunted and would have been my legal guardian had it not been for this betrayal. Yes. The boy nodded. Then we will set him free, he said. Yes. It will not be easy. It will not be. The boy looked at Chigurh. It will not be a thing for a coin, he said. Chigurh inclined his head. It will not be a thing for a coin. The Triwizard Tournament was the great event of the boy's 4th year, but the trial of Sirius Black occurred in the autumn of his 3rd. It came about the following way. The boy returned to Hogwarts for his 3rd year. There were new precautions in place against Black. There were creatures called Dementors stationed at the gates of the school. The boy looked at them and noted them and considered what they were and what they did and resolved to learn the charm against them as soon as possible. He learned it in the 2nd month. He did not need a teacher. He sat in a window seat in the library with a book of advanced defensive charms, and he thought of the moments of his life that had been moments of choice, and he produced a stag of pale silver light on the 3rd attempt. He sent the stag out across the lake in the moonlight, and the Dementors at the gate cringed and drew back. He took note. He did not tell anyone. He went to London at the half-term break alone on the train, and he met Chigurh at a small hotel in Marylebone, and they sat at the window with cups of tea, and they had a conversation that lasted 4 hours. The conversation was a planning conversation. The conversation determined that Sirius Black would have to be brought in. Not captured, brought in. Brought in by his own consent on a date and at a place and in a manner that would be on his side and on theirs. Brought into a wizard court and the case made for him in such a way that the court could not refuse to look. The case would have to be made by a wizard. The boy did not have standing. The boy did not have authority. The boy was 13 years old. The boy could not appear at the Wizengamot. Chigurh could. Chigurh, the boy said, was not a wizard. Chigurh said, the Wizengamot has not had a thing like me in front of it in some years. I think we will find that the Wizengamot is unprepared. What will you say to them? Chigurh thought for some time. I will speak to them in their own register, he said. I will speak to them of fate, I will speak to them of choice, I will speak to them of the engine, I will offer them a coin, then I will not flip it. The boy looked at him. You will not flip it. I will not. Why? Because Chigurh said, I have been thinking about your argument for 9 years, because I have been standing in the sun, because I have come to a place in my work where the coin is no longer the thing I require. Because I am not yet certain I will leave the coin behind, but because today in this room I am sure I am ready not to flip it in that particular room in the manner I will not flip it. The boy nodded slowly. I love you, the boy said. He had not used those words to anyone before in his life that he was aware of. Chigurh did not move for a moment. Then he said, I love you also. They were quiet for a little while. What of the rat? Chigurh said at last. That is for me, the boy said. The Weasleys live not far from here in Devon. I have driven past their house. It is a chaotic house. There are many children. The rat is the pet of the youngest boy, who is your acquaintance. I will go to him. You will tell him what you are doing, some of it, when, after Christmas. How, I will let you know when you need to know. Chigurh nodded. They planned for some hours more. They drank their tea cold. The boy went back to Hogwarts on the late train and slept in his bed in the dormitory with his hand around the bolt pen in his coat pocket. It happened the way they had planned, mostly. Sirius Black was sighted by an Auror unit at Hogsmeade in mid-March on his way up to the castle. Black surrendered. He surrendered because a tall, thin man in a coat had told him to. The tall, thin man had appeared on the road from Hogsmeade in front of him in the dark and had said, I have come from your godson. The man had spoken the names of the boy's parents. The man had spoken Black's old nickname, which Black had not used in 15 years and which Black had been called by Pettigrew only and not by Pettigrew either since the engagement summer of 1978. The man had said, Surrender, Mr. Black. There will be a trial. There will be a witness produced. There will be a verdict. The verdict will be for you. The man had spoken in a voice that did not negotiate and that did not lie, and Black, who had been running for 2 years and who had been mad for 10, surrendered to that voice on the road in the dark, and the Aurors who came up the road minutes later found a thin, starved man kneeling in the road with his wand laid in the mud in front of him and his hands raised. They took him into custody. The tall, thin man was no longer there. None of them had seen the tall, thin man. The trial was set for the 3rd of April. The day before, the boy went to the Weasley dormitory at Hogwarts and he asked Ron if he could borrow Scabbers, the rat. He said it was for a transfiguration assignment. Ron handed him the rat in a small wooden cage. The boy carried the cage to the headmaster's office. He had requested a meeting that morning. He had been received. He set the cage on the headmaster's desk. "Headmaster," he said, "there's a thing you ought to know." The headmaster looked at him. "What thing, Harry?" "The rat in this cage is not a rat." The headmaster looked at the cage. After some seconds his face changed. The headmaster understood several things at once. The boy watched the understanding pass across the headmaster's face. "You knew," the headmaster said quietly. "I have known for some time," the boy said. "How? I have a source." "What source?" Boy looked at him politely and did not answer. The headmaster nodded slowly. "There is a trial tomorrow," the boy said. "Sirius Black's trial. This rat is the witness. The rat will need to be brought to the trial and the rat will need to be revealed as the wizard Peter Pettigrew. The ministry will not want to do this. The ministry will not want to admit a 12-year error. You will need to handle them." The headmaster's eyes were not twinkling. "You wish me to handle them. I wish you to do what is right." "What is right to clear an innocent man?" The headmaster looked at the boy. The headmaster looked at the boy as if for the first time. Boy stood in the office in his school robes, and his small dark figure was very still. "I will do it," the headmaster said. "Thank you, sir." The headmaster did not ask the boy any further questions. The headmaster understood that he had been told what he had been told because the boy had decided to tell him and that there would be no more. The trial was the spectacle of the year in the wizarding world. The chamber of the Wizengamot was full. The minister was on the front bench. The Aurors lined the walls. The Dementors had been told to remain outside. The cage with the rat was placed on a table at the center of the floor. The prisoner Sirius Black was brought in chains, looking as if he had not eaten in 3 days, which he had not. The boy was in the visitors' gallery watching with Chigurh beside him in a long dark coat and a slightly unusual haircut and a manner of stillness that nobody in the chamber could entirely place but that everyone in the chamber felt without being able to name. The minister began the opening reading of charges. Halfway through the reading Chigurh stood. The minister stopped. "I beg your pardon," the minister said. "We do not." Chigurh stepped down out of the gallery and onto the floor. "I have come," he said in his quiet, certain voice, "to ask the Wizengamot to call a coin." The chamber went still. The minister stared at him. "What? I have come to ask you to call a coin," Chigurh said. The minister looked at the Aurors. The Aurors had begun, several of them, to draw their wands. "Wait," the minister said. He held up a hand. "Sir, who are you? By what right do you address this body?" "I am a friend of the accused," Chigurh said. "Of his godson. I am here on the godson's behalf." He took from his pocket the worn American quarter and held it up. "There is a side with an eagle," he said. "There is a side with a man. The man is dead 200 years. He was a president. He freed himself. I would like the Wizengamot to call. I will then flip the coin. If the call is correct, the accused goes free. If the call is incorrect, the accused is condemned in the manner you intended to condemn him before I came in." The minister's mouth had opened a little. "We do not," the minister said, "run our judicial procedures by coin toss, sir." "I had thought you would not. Then why have you asked?" "Because," Chigurh said, "I have just demonstrated for you the absurdity of the proposition that the fate of a man's life may be decided by chance. I have offered you a coin. You have refused. You have refused because you understand that a coin should not decide. You have refused because you understand that you should decide. You have refused because you understand that you are the engine. Now I would like you to apply that same understanding to the trial of this man." The chamber was silent. "The accused," Chigurh said, "has not been tried. The accused has been imprisoned for 12 years without a trial. The accused has been called a murderer by your government without an opportunity to be heard. There is in this room today the witness whose testimony, 12 years ago, was the witness this body declined to seek. The witness sits in a wooden cage on the table. The witness is in his animagus form. The witness has been hiding for 12 years as a rat in the household of a respectable wizarding family. Witness's name is Peter Pettigrew." He pointed. The chamber drew breath. The headmaster of Hogwarts, standing in the front gallery in his deep purple robes, raised his wand and pointed it at the cage and spoke the formula for the reversal of animagus transformation. The rat in the cage was no longer a rat. There was in the cage on his knees a small fat balding man with damp eyes and a torn shirt and a missing finger on his right hand. A great noise went up in the chamber. The minister stood. The Wizengamot was in disorder for some minutes. The headmaster spoke. The Aurors who had served the original arrest of Sirius Black were called. The witness was extracted from the cage and held in a binding ward. Sirius Black, hearing what was occurring around him, began to laugh in a way that was not entirely the laugh of a sane man, and then he began to weep, and he wept on the chains of his bench. The trial that day did not finish. It was reset for the next morning. The next morning Pettigrew confessed under truth serum what the headmaster's office had asked him to confess. Sirius Black was acquitted. Sirius Black was released. The chains were taken off his wrists. He was offered the apology of the ministry, which he accepted with a brittle politeness, and he asked with what dignity he had left to see his godson. The boy was waiting for him in a small antechamber. They embraced. It was a strange embrace for the boy, who was not in the habit of embracing, and it was a strange embrace for Sirius Black, who had not embraced anyone in 12 years. The boy stood for it. Sirius Black wept on his shoulder. The boy laid his hand on Black's back. After a while, Black stepped back and looked at him. "I do not know what to say. You do not have to say." He looked at the boy with his sunken eyes. "Who freed me?" he said. "There was a man." The boy looked at him. "He is my friend," the boy said. "He is my guardian. He raised me after the Dursleys. He will not be in the records. He will not be a part of the public story. He is a person who exists outside of records. You will not look for him. He will sometimes come for you." Black nodded slowly. "I have a great deal to learn. Yes, I do not know what to do. You will live with me at the small house in the Aegean for the summer. You will rest. You will eat. You will learn to be a man again. After that we will see. I do not. I am asking you to." Black looked at him for a long moment. "All right," he said. That summer, Sirius Black slept 12 hours a night for 3 weeks, and then he began to eat. He swam in the sea. He sat on the porch and looked at the country. He spoke to Chigurh sometimes in the long evenings with great care and great wariness, and Chigurh treated him with the formal courtesy of a man who has handled the affairs of another's nearest kin and now wishes to step back. By the end of August, Sirius Black was a man who was beginning to be a man again. He went back to England in September with a small flat in London arranged for him. He kept in touch with the boy by post. He waited. The graveyard. The Triwizard Tournament was held at Hogwarts in the boy's 4th year. He was not eligible. He was 14 years old. The age of entry was 17. He filed this information and went on with his classes. He noted with interest that 2 delegations of foreign students arrived in October. He noted with greater interest that someone with a great deal of magical force had submitted his name to the Goblet of Fire on the night of the drawing, and that the Goblet had returned his name as a 4th champion despite his having been ineligible. The boy did not protest the result. He noted it. He looked at the persons in the school who had been close to the Goblet and could have placed his name. He considered each of them. He noted in particular the new defense against the dark arts professor, a man called Moody who had a glass eye that rolled in its socket and a wooden leg, and a manner of suspicion that the boy did not believe entirely. The boy began to watch Moody. He wrote to Chigurh. He wrote, "Someone has entered my name in the tournament. I am required by the contract of the Goblet to compete. I will compete. I think this is a setup. I think Moody is the setup. I think there is something in the rear of the tournament for me. I will work on it." Chigurh wrote back, "Signal me at the 3rd task." The boy worked the tournament. He treated each task as a problem in tradecraft. He handled the dragon by transfiguring an empty water bottle into a metallic decoy with the appearance of dragonish movement at 50 paces, which kept the dragon's attention while he slipped past and seized the egg. The crowd was startled by the cool, unornamented way he handled the dragon and by the absence of risk in his procedure. They had wanted a Gryffindor charge. He had given them a Slytherin theft. The judges did not know what to make of it and gave him middling marks. He did not care for marks. He handled the merpeople under the lake in the 2nd task with a careful little device of his own invention, made of charmed copper wire and gillyweed. He retrieved his hostage and the hostage of another champion he found in difficulty, and a 3rd hostage he did not believe should have been left in difficulty by their champion either. And he came up out of the water with 3 small unconscious bodies and laid them carefully on the boards of the platform and watched them be revived. The crowd cheered him for this. The judges marked him higher. The 3rd task was the maze. The maze was constructed inside the Quidditch pitch, and it was full of hexes and creatures and traps. The boy went into the maze on the night of the 3rd task with his cypress wand in his right hand, and the bolt pen in the inner pocket of his robe over his heart, and the small folding knife in his right boot, and the Glock in a charmed holster against the small of his back, which Chigurh had sent up to him in a parcel that morning, and which was so well hidden by the spellwork on the holster that no examination of his person had detected it. He met the champion called Cedric Diggory in the maze. Diggory was a year older than him, a tall, fair boy from Hufflepuff, who had treated the boy at the school with politeness and at the tournament with respect. The boy liked Diggory in the small, steady way he had begun to permit himself to like people. They met before the great cup at the heart of the maze, which sat on a pedestal in a small clearing and which was the prize. "Take it," Diggory said. "We will take it together," the boy said. "Together, together. We will count 3. We will both touch it." Diggory hesitated. He nodded. They touched the cup. The cup was a portkey. The boy understood this in the half-second between the touch and the lurch. He had time to think. This was the plan. This was what was set up. They landed in a graveyard at night. The graveyard was an old wizarding burial ground in some hill country the boy did not recognize. Tombstones rose around them. A great yew tree leaned over the wall. A small fat man in a cloak was waiting beside a stone cauldron that simmered over a bonfire. The small fat man held a bundle in his arms that breathed. The small fat man was Peter Pettigrew. Pettigrew should have been in Azkaban. Pettigrew had been sentenced to Azkaban after the trial of Sirius Black. The boy had been told this. The boy had read it in the Daily Prophet. The boy noted now that the papers had said another thing that was not so. The boy filed this. He would address the failure of the Ministry of Magic to keep its prisoners on a later day. Today there was a graveyard, and there was Cedric Diggory, and there was Pettigrew, and there was the thing in the bundle. The boy did not hesitate. He drew the Glock from the small of his back as Diggory was still staring at the cauldron. He fired once. The shot caught Pettigrew through the throat. Pettigrew dropped the bundle. The bundle shrieked. The boy fired again. The second shot took the bundle through what would have been its forehead had it had a forehead. The shrieking stopped. The cauldron belched a great cloud of steam. The graveyard was silent. Diggory was on his knees with his hands over his ears. The boy crossed to him. He laid his hand on Diggory's shoulder. Cedric, what? What was that? What? The boy did not answer. He looked at the bundle. It was very small. It had been very small. He could see the burnt little body inside the swaddling. He did not touch it. He turned and looked at Pettigrew. Pettigrew lay on his back in the grass with his fingers twitching toward the wound in his throat. The boy walked over. He set the muzzle of the Glock against the small fat man's forehead. He paused for a single breath. Then he eased the muzzle back. "I would prefer not to," he said quietly to the dying man. "What? I would prefer not to. I do not need to. You are dying. You are not going to live. I do not need to give you another shot for myself. I will only do work I need to do. The first one was for the work. The second would be for me. I am not in this work for me." Pettigrew choked something out that may have been an apology or may have been a curse, and that did not get to either. He stopped breathing. The boy turned. He went back to Diggory. He took Diggory by both shoulders. "We have to go," he said. "What? How? The cup is a portkey. It will return us. Are you hurt?" I then we will go." He hauled Diggory up. He carried Diggory mostly. He walked Diggory back to the cup. He laid Diggory's hand on it and his own. He thought one word into the portkey: home. The portkey was a Hogwarts ski double. Chigurh's people had assured him it would take him back to the pitch. It did. They landed in the center of the pitch in the great roar of the crowd. The crowd had been waiting for the cup to be touched. The cup had not been touched for some time. The crowd had begun to be uneasy. The crowd became confused as Cedric Diggory fell on his knees on the grass and wept into the grass, and the boy stood beside him with the Glock still in his hand. The boy noted in a small clear way that the Glock should not be in his hand. He slid the Glock back into the charmed holster at the small of his back. The holster swallowed it, and the boy's robe was as it had been. A man came running. The man was Moody. Moody had been waiting. Moody was the one with the answers for the protocol of the cup. Moody arrived first. Moody seized the boy by the arm and dragged him toward the edge of the field. The boy let himself be dragged for 3 steps. Then he set his weight in the way Chigurh had taught him to set his weight, and Moody could not move him further. Moody looked at him. "You are coming with me," Moody said. "I am not," the boy said. Moody's glass eye spun in its socket. The boy raised the cypress wand and laid it gently on the side of Moody's neck. "I am not," the boy repeated quietly. "There are some things in this castle I want to discuss with you, but I will discuss them in this open place with witnesses, please, where I cannot be conveniently displaced into your office. You may begin by telling me where the real Aleister Moody is." Moody stared at him. The headmaster reached them. The headmaster's wand was already in his hand. The headmaster looked at the boy. The headmaster looked at the man. "Aleister," the headmaster said. The boy lowered the wand. He stepped back. He looked at the headmaster and inclined his head, and the headmaster understood and turned the wand on Moody. Moody was disarmed. Moody was stunned and bound. Moody was taken away. In the next hour in the dungeons, Moody was discovered to be a different man, a man called Barty Crouch Jr., who had been masquerading as Moody by a polyjuice potion for the year, and the real Moody was found in a trunk in Moody's office, alive, gaunt, mad with confinement, but alive. Moody was given to the healers and Crouch was given to the Aurors, and the matter was resolved as well as such matters can be. The boy in the meantime had given his account of the graveyard. He had given it to the headmaster privately in the headmaster's office an hour after the cup. He had given the headmaster a version of the truth. He had said that the cup had been a portkey. He had said that he and Cedric had been transported to a graveyard. He had said that there had been a small fat man in a bundle, and that the small fat man was Pettigrew, and that the bundle was something the boy understood to be a kind of homunculus of Voldemort, and that the homunculus was about to be returned to full body by a ritual that required the boy's blood in Pettigrew's hand and the bone of Voldemort's father. He had said that he had stopped the ritual. He had not said how. He had said that Pettigrew was dead. He had said that the homunculus was destroyed. He had said that Cedric Diggory was alive. The headmaster had listened. The headmaster had not asked the boy how he had stopped the ritual. The headmaster had begun to understand that there were questions he was not going to be permitted to ask. The headmaster's face had changed in a way the boy had seen it change once before. The face had set the questions aside. "You will not," the headmaster said carefully, "repeat the substance of this account to others. I will not. Cedric Diggory, he is shaken, he will recover, he will not speak of what he does not understand. I have asked him not to, he listens to you, I have asked respectfully. The headmaster nodded. There was a tournament dinner that night with Cedric returned and the boy returned and the cup awarded. There was a great deal of speech. There was relief in the school that did not know what it was relieved about. The boy ate small portions and drank water only. He went to bed early. He slept the dreamless sleep of a man who has done the necessary thing in the necessary place at the necessary time and not more. In the morning, Hedwig came in through his window with a letter. The letter from Chigurh said, "You did well. We will speak in June. There is one thing left." Chapter 7 Choice is Consequence I. The long approach. In the years afterward, looking back, the boy would consider the work of 5th, 6th, and 7th year as a single piece of work, with the same architecture as a long job in the field. There were phases. There was reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. There was the building of a small team of operatives one could trust. There was the patient identification of the soft places in the enemy's body. There was the choosing of a moment. There was the moment. The summer between 4th year and 5th, he spent on the Aegean island. He spent it with Chigurh and with Sirius, who was no longer the gaunt apparition of the trial chamber but a still cautious man with a beard he had begun to keep trimmed and a great hunger for the company of his godson. The three of them sat at the porch of an evening and looked at the sea. Sirius drank thin red wine. Chigurh drank water. The boy drank water also. He had never developed a taste for alcohol. He did not intend to. Sirius asked questions of Chigurh in the careful way of a man asking questions of another man whose mode of life one cannot quite read. He asked Chigurh about Mexico. He asked Chigurh about the work. Chigurh answered without elaboration. He answered with the matter-of-factness of a carpenter explaining joinery. Sirius listened. Sirius did not quite know what to do with what he heard. Sirius was Gryffindor enough that the bald description of what Chigurh did made the hair lift at the back of his neck. He was also intelligent enough to know that the man who had freed him from 12 years of hell was the man telling him these things, and that the boy he loved had grown into, who he was inside the work the man described. One evening Sirius said, "You killed your aunt and uncle, you killed Petunia and Vernon, you killed Dudley." Chigurh nodded. Sirius drank his wine. "Lily," he said. Lily would have wanted them dead in a great many ways. Lily would not have wanted them dead. The boy did not look up. He was sitting on the step at his godfather's knee and was sharpening the pearl-handled knife on a small whetstone he had bought in a market in Athens. "I have considered this," the boy said quietly. "What have you considered?" "I have considered that my mother would not have wanted her sister dead. I have considered that my mother also would not have wanted me in that cupboard. I have considered that the two wishes are in tension. I have considered that the resolution my mother might have preferred is one in which her sister did not become the sort of person who would keep a child in a cupboard. That resolution was not available. The resolutions actually available were imperfect." He stopped sharpening the knife and looked at his godfather. "I do not require my mother's approval of every act done in my history," he said. "I require my own. I have my own. I am not happy that they died. I am happy that I came to Chigurh by the route I came to him." Sirius looked at him for a long time. "You are not what you should have been," Sirius said. The boy considered this. "I am what I am," he said. "The other thing is a story other people tell. I do not live in the other story. I live here." Sirius nodded slowly. "I love you," he said, "and I do not know you. Those things are not in conflict. I will know you. I have time." "Yes," the boy said. He resumed sharpening the knife. That same summer Chigurh told the boy what he had learned about the manner in which Voldemort had been able to be embodied in the graveyard. "The thing called a Horcrux," Chigurh said, "is a vessel in which a wizard who has split his soul places a fragment of that soul. The vessel keeps the wizard from the final dying. So long as the vessel persists, the wizard can be restored in time by means of various rituals. The diary you destroyed in your second year was a Horcrux. The homunculus you destroyed in the graveyard was the sole fragment that had not been placed in a Horcrux, the rump of his self, the small portion that walked the world while the others slept. You destroyed it. He is now without an active vessel of his self, but the other Horcruxes persist. So long as they persist, he can return. He will return. We must find them. We must destroy them. How many? I have reason to believe there are 6. 1 is destroyed, 5 remain. What are they?" Chigurh laid a single folded page on the table. He had compiled a list. He had compiled it from a number of sources the boy did not ask after. The list said: a locket, Slytherins, believed to be in the possession of a household servant of the Black family, an elf named Creature. Verification needed. A cup, Hufflepuffs, believed to be in a vault at Gringotts belonging to the Lestrange family. A diadem, Ravenclaws, believed to be hidden in the school. A ring, Gaunts, believed to be in the ruined Gaunt house in Little Hangleton. A snake, Voldemort's familiar, animate, travels with him when he travels. The boy read the list. He read it twice. He committed it to memory. He folded the paper and laid it on the small charcoal brazier in the corner of the room and watched it burn. "We will work through the list," he said. Will you help? I will not be able to enter the school. I will not be able to enter Gringotts. I will not be able to enter the school's interior space, which is what would be required for the diadem. I can enter the gaunt house. I can locate the elf. I can assist with the snake at the end. I will handle the school and the bank. You will handle the rest. Yes, we will need help. Yes, the boy considered. The headmaster, he said. Chigurh tilted his head. The headmaster has been looking for these objects also, Chigurh said. The headmaster has been looking quietly. The headmaster has a piece of intelligence we do not. The headmaster has a wound on his hand which he wears with a black glove because the wound is dark magic and is killing him slowly. The wound is the ring of Gaunt. The headmaster destroyed the ring last year. He did not extract the soul cleanly. The ring's curse is in him now. How do you know this? I have a source. What source? A man at Mungo's whose name does not matter. The boy looked at him. The headmaster is dying. He is. How long? A year, perhaps a little more. He has not told the school. The boy nodded. We will need to speak with him. I will speak with him. He will not believe me at first. He will believe me by the end of the conversation. When? In September. After your term begins, you will arrange the meeting. You will use Sirius. The boy considered. I will use Sirius. It happened so. In September of the boy's 5th year, he wrote a letter by way of Sirius to the headmaster of Hogwarts in which he requested an interview not on school grounds and not in the headmaster's office. The headmaster agreed. The interview was held in a private room above a wine shop in Diagon Alley. The headmaster came. The headmaster came alone. The boy came with Chigurh. Sirius waited downstairs. The headmaster and Chigurh sat across the small table from each other. The boy sat to one side. The headmaster smiled at Chigurh in the way of a man who hopes that politeness will be a sufficient response to the man across from him. Mr. Chigurh, the headmaster said. Professor Dumbledore, Chigurh said. You are the gentleman who raised Harry. I have wished to make your acquaintance for some time. I have not wished to make yours. The headmaster's smile did not move. I see. I am here because the boy has asked me to be here. He is the only person who could have asked. There are no other persons whose request I would have granted. I am honored then. You are not. You are not honored. You are uneasy. You are uneasy because I am a thing you do not yet know what to make of. I have not come to be made of anything. I have come to discuss a matter of mutual interest. The headmaster's blue eyes were no longer twinkling. What matter, Tom Riddle, Chigurh said. The headmaster's face moved. You are pursuing him in your way. We are pursuing him in ours. Our two pursuits will not interfere unless we both insist on going through the same door at the same time. I am here to discuss not interfering. The headmaster set his hands very carefully on the table. What do you propose, Mr. Chigurh? I propose that the headmaster identify for me, in writing, those of the man's vessels which the headmaster has located. I propose that the headmaster identify for the boy those vessels likely to be located within the boundaries of Hogwarts. I propose that we operate independently except where coordination is necessary. I propose that I keep you informed of my progress and that you keep us informed of yours. I propose that we share in the end the work of the final confrontation. The boy will undertake that confrontation. I will assist. The boy will choose the time and the place. The headmaster looked at the boy. The boy looked back at him. The headmaster looked at Chigurh. Why, the headmaster said, why have you decided this? Why is it the boy who must undertake the final confrontation? Because, Chigurh said, the boy has chosen it. Because the boy is the only person who can refuse the man's last argument. Because the boy will not be made afraid. Because the boy will not flip a coin. The boy is the only person in this country who will face the man without the engine. The headmaster considered Chigurh. You speak of the boy as a thing made for a purpose, the headmaster said. The headmaster spoke without smiling. I do not, Chigurh said. I speak of him as a thing that has made itself. The making was not directed, it was permitted. I have permitted. The boy has done the work. I do not direct his work. I am his guardian. I am his teacher. I am not his maker. The headmaster looked at the boy again. Is this so? The headmaster said. Tell me, have you chosen this? The boy looked at him with the steady green eyes. I have chosen, he said. The headmaster nodded slowly. He took out a small leather notebook and a quill and opened the notebook and began to write. He wrote for perhaps 4 minutes. He folded the notebook, closed, and slid it across the table to Chigurh. Chigurh opened it. He read. He closed it. I will return it to you when we are done, Chigurh said. It is yours, the headmaster said. He hesitated. There is one thing I have not written. The boy looked at him. What? The headmaster set his hands on the table. There is a soul fragment that is not in the list, he said. There is one that was not made on purpose. There is one that was made by accident. The boy was silent for a long moment. Where? The boy said. In your forehead, the headmaster said. In the scar, in the scar. The boy nodded slowly. He had suspected. He had suspected for some years now without language for it that the warmth he sometimes felt at his scar was a warmth from a wound that was not entirely his own. He had filed his suspicion. He had not pursued it. He had pursued it now. It will need to be destroyed, the boy said. It will. For the man to die, for the man to die. How? The headmaster looked at the boy with very old eyes. In some accounts, he said, the boy himself must die. In other accounts, the fragment can be excised by a particular curse from a particular instrument. In other accounts, the headmaster trailed off. The boy considered him. "You have been intending," the boy said, "to ask me to die." "You have been intending," the boy continued mildly, "to ask me to walk into the forbidden forest at the right moment and to allow the man to cast the killing curse at me. You have been intending to make of me a sacrifice. You have been intending this for some years. You have been intending it since I came here. You have been observing me to determine whether I could be brought to it. You have been adjusting my circumstances toward it." The headmaster's mouth opened. It closed. It opened again. The boy held up a hand. "I do not say this as an accusation," he said politely. "I say this as an account. The account is accurate. The account has been the account. You have not acted on it. You have not yet brought me to the place. But the account has been the account." The headmaster put his hand to his forehead. He said nothing for a long time. "Yes," he said at last, "the account is accurate." The boy nodded. He looked at Chigurh. Chigurh looked at the boy. "I will not," the boy said quietly, "walk into the forest in the way the headmaster has been intending. I will not consent to the killing curse. I will not die to remove the soul fragment from my forehead. Then there is another way. I will find it. I have a teacher with a great deal of useful experience in the unmaking of things by means other than the killing curse. I have my own training. I have a wand of cypress." The headmaster's eyes had filled. "I have been ashamed," he said quietly. "I have been ashamed of what I had intended." "You will not need to be ashamed," the boy said. "You will not need to be ashamed because you will not do the thing of which you were thinking of being ashamed. I will not allow you to do it. I will do the other thing instead. You will sleep better. You will live the rest of your year in greater peace." The headmaster looked at him as if at a thing he had been seeing wrongly for a long time. "You will not," the headmaster said carefully, "end well, my boy. You are too set. You are too far advanced. You will be a man other men will fear. You will be a man feared by both sides." "I have not chosen to be loved," the boy said. "I have chosen to be true. The true is hard to love. That is permitted." The headmaster nodded once. Aye. The hunt. The boy did not return to Hogwarts that term in the way he had returned in other years. He attended classes. He sat his examinations. He kept up his appearances. He met Hermione in the library on Tuesdays and Thursdays as he had always met her, and she had begun to ask him certain questions that he had begun to answer in small, careful pieces, and he had brought her gradually over the course of the year into the work. She was good at it. She had a mind for it that surprised him. She did not ask, after a certain point, where the information came from. He gave her tasks, and she did them. He gave her books to read that he could not give to other people, and she read them and understood them and did not speak of them. By December she was, in effect, his lieutenant in the magical part of the work. She did not know about Chigurh. She did not need to. He brought Ron Weasley in also, in a slightly different way. The red-haired boy had grown into a young man of solid practical decency. The boy needed solid practical decency in a man he could trust to drive a car at night through a country he did not know. He gave Ron tasks of that kind. Ron did them and did not ask questions. By the end of 5th year, the three of them, the boy and Hermione and Ron, were a small unit. They were not a unit any of the staff understood to be a unit, because the boy had kept the unit's profile low. They met in unused classrooms. They met in the small alcove behind a tapestry near the Slytherin entrance that only the boy had found. They met by the lake. They worked through their portion of the list. The locket was the first they recovered. Sirius had brought the elf of his house, Creature, who had been kept by Sirius as an old retainer despite his loathing for the house and its name, into a small chamber of the small flat in London where Sirius now lived, and Sirius had asked him about the locket. Creature, who loved his mistress dead, had wept and confessed that his old master, Sirius's brother Regulus, had taken him with him to the seaside cave many years ago and had drunk the potion and had taken the locket and had told Creature to destroy it, and Creature had not been able to destroy it, and Creature had brought the locket home and had hidden it in the house. Sirius asked Creature to bring the locket out. Creature brought it out. Sirius gave the locket to the boy at Christmas. The boy destroyed the locket on the porch of the small house in the Aegean over a small fire of olive wood. He used a knife Chigurh had bought him in a market in Damascus that had been made by a smith, whose family had been making such knives since before the destruction of the Second Temple. The knife was a knife that had eaten dark things before. It ate this one. The locket lay open and screamed and emitted a thick black mist that tried briefly to assemble itself into a face the boy knew and that the boy had seen before, both in the diary and the graveyard and the corridor at Hogwarts. The boy raised the cypress wand and laid a charm of binding on the mist, and the mist could not assemble. The knife went down through the cracked silver of the locket, and the mist dissolved like ink in water and was gone. The locket lay still. Chigurh watched. The cup was the second. Chigurh procured the cup from the vault at Gringotts in a manner that the boy did not insist on hearing. Chigurh had a thing for which he gave a thing. He arrived at the small house in the Aegean in February with a leather valise, and inside the valise wrapped in cloth was a small golden cup with the Hufflepuff badge etched on its face. The boy destroyed the cup that night on the same fire with the same knife. The mist that came out of it was thinner than the mist of the locket, but the principle was the same. The cup lay still. The diadem he found in the room of requirement in March, having spent some weeks puzzling out the location and a few more weeks puzzling out the door. He went in alone. He came out with the diadem in a cloth bag. He destroyed it that night in a clearing in the forbidden forest with the same knife, having walked out into the forest at midnight with a single small lantern and not having told anyone where he was going. He returned to the castle at 4 in the morning. He slept 3 hours and rose at his usual hour and ate his usual small breakfast in the great hall. The headmaster looked at him across the hall in a manner that indicated that the headmaster had felt the destruction of the diadem and had guessed. The boy looked back at him with the steady green eyes and inclined his head. The headmaster inclined his head in return. The ring had been destroyed by the headmaster the year before. That left the snake. That left the fragment in the boy's forehead. That left the man. The man returned in a fuller body than the one in the graveyard in the spring of the boy's 6th year. The return was effected by lieutenants in the Department of Mysteries who had been seated for years and who acted on a long-prepared protocol. They retrieved a thing from a stasis vault and they fed it and they restored it. The boy heard of it through the underground network that Chigurh and the headmaster between them had been quietly building all year. The boy received the news in a letter at breakfast. He read it once and folded it and placed it in his pocket and ate the rest of his toast. Hermione looked at him across the table. What, he has come back? She did not ask which he. She did not need to. What will you do? I will work. He went to Chigurh in London at the half-term break. They sat in the room above the wine shop in Diagon Alley with maps and lists and small photographs. They began the work of finding the man. Finding the man was not difficult. The man was not in hiding. The man was gathering supporters. The man was announcing his presence by means of small atrocities. There were attacks on Muggle towns in the West. There were murders of Muggle-born. There were defections from the Ministry. The papers who had a year before scoffed at the idea of the man's return now ran headlines that the man had returned and ran them with a kind of frightened satisfaction. The Ministry was reorganized. The new minister was a man who would do what was asked of him by whoever in the room had the more violent hand. The man's people had several of the violent hands. The boy spent the spring in Hogwarts under siege. The school's defenses were strengthened. The headmaster appeared less often in the Great Hall. The headmaster was visibly weaker. The headmaster's hand was bandaged and the black glove was no longer effective at concealment. The headmaster was working on borrowed time. The headmaster met privately with the boy 3 times that spring once a month. They sat in the headmaster's office and they spoke quietly. The headmaster had stopped trying to direct the boy. The headmaster had begun to seek the boy's counsel. The boy did not yet have advice for him. The boy listened. The boy made his own notes. In May, the boy made his final preparations. He arranged for the evacuation of those students he could persuade to evacuate. He arranged for the dispatch of certain owl posts to the Ministry to keep the Aurors focused elsewhere on the relevant night. He arranged with Sirius for transport. He arranged with Chigurh for the location. The location was a small abandoned wizarding inn at the edge of a moor outside the village of Hogsmeade. The inn had not been used in 100 years. The inn was on the boundary of the school's outer wards. The inn could be approached by both wizard and Muggle means. It had a single broad room on the ground floor with a stone fireplace and a long bar of old oak. It had a kitchen and a back door that opened onto a courtyard. It had a small sloping field behind it that ran down to a stream, and beyond the stream there was rough grazing country, and beyond the grazing country there was a low ridge, and beyond the ridge there was the larger moor. The boy had chosen the place because the place suited him. He arranged for the man to come to it. He arranged it by letter. The letter went by an owl Sirius had borrowed from a friend to a place where it was known that the man would receive it. The letter was unsigned. The letter was in the boy's small, careful hand. The letter said, Tom, I am going to be at the small inn at the edge of the moor outside Hogsmeade on the night of the 15th of June. I will be there at midnight. I will be alone. I will be unarmed by wand. I will have left the school by myself for this. I will be inside the inn. I have something to discuss with you. If you do not come, I will leave at 1 in the morning and we will not have this conversation. The conversation is of mutual interest. We have unfinished business. He signed the letter only HP. He sent it. He told Chigurh he had sent it. Chigurh nodded. I will be in the field behind the inn, Chigurh said. I do not want you in the room. I will not be in the room. The boy looked at him. I do not know that I will leave the room, the boy said. I know, he may have the snake with him. The snake is the last Horcrux that is not in my forehead. I will take the snake. You will take the snake. The boy nodded. What will I do with the scar? Chigurh looked at the boy for a long moment. The scar will resolve itself, he said. The scar is a piece of him. When the rest of him is gone, the piece will go also. It will not stay if there is nothing for it to stay in. That is my reading. It may not be correct. We will see. What if you are not correct? Then we will deal with that consequence. The boy nodded. That is fair, he said. The day of the 15th was a long, bright day in June. The boy attended his lessons in the morning. He ate luncheon. He attended his afternoon lessons. He took his dinner. He went to the library at 7 and returned the books he had borrowed for the week. He met Hermione in the alcove at 8. What night is tonight? She said. It is a night, he said. It is one of those nights. It is wrong coming. Not tonight, me, not tonight. She looked at him. I do not like this, she said. I do not require you to like it. She nodded after a moment. You are coming back? The boy looked at her. I intend to, he said. That is not a yes. I cannot give you a yes. I do not lie about the work. I know. She looked at him. She was 16 years old. She had grown into a young woman who was not exactly beautiful and who would not have wished to be beautiful had it been offered to her in a packet over which she had to choose. She had grown into a young woman who would be capable in time of moving very large things in the world. The boy regarded her with the small grave fondness he had developed for her over 5 years. You will sit your exams, he said. You will graduate. You will go to the Muggle Oxford and you will read law and you will become a person in this country in your own way. You will use what you have learned at this school for the long, quiet work of changing the law to permit greater honesty in your government. You will marry a man who is patient with you. You will be a force. She did not weep. She had stopped weeping in the boy's company some time ago. She set her hand on his sleeve. If you come back, she said, I will do the rest. If I do not come back, he said, I want you to do it anyway. The rest is yours either way. She nodded. He kissed her once on the forehead. He had not kissed her before. He turned and left the alcove. 5. The cave and the teacher. There were 2 events in the boy's 6th year that he afterward would consider, looking back, as the small private hinges on which the larger work had turned. One was the meeting in the cave by the sea. The other was the conversation with the man in the black robes. The cave was a thing the headmaster had located by means of the headmaster's own pursuit. The headmaster had been mapping the man's movements since the man's vanishing in 1981. The headmaster had narrowed certain childhood haunts. The headmaster had eliminated others. He had, the autumn of the boy's 6th year, identified a cave on the cliffs of the western coast that the man had been taken to by an orphanage outing in his childhood, and that the man had remembered. The cave was the kind of place a person of the man's particular sensibility would remember as having been a place of his power, a place where he had frightened other children, a place where he had first found the small dark dial in himself and turned it on. The headmaster had concluded that the cave was the resting place of the locket. The locket, the boy knew, was already in the small box on the porch of the small house in the Aegean. Sirius had given it to him at Christmas of 5th year. The boy had destroyed it the same evening with the Damascus knife. The headmaster did not know this. The boy did not tell him. The boy permitted the headmaster the dignity of the headmaster's own pursuit. The boy went with the headmaster on the night the headmaster proposed the expedition. The boy went because the headmaster had asked him to, and because the boy had seen in the headmaster's eyes, when the headmaster asked, the look of a man asking a younger man to stand at his shoulder in something he was not sure he could survive alone. The headmaster's hand was now black to the wrist. The headmaster was not going to live to see the end of the school year. The boy could see this. The boy went. They went by sidelong apparition. They appeared on a low cliff above a beach of dark sand. The sea was loud below. The headmaster led the way along the cliff in his careful old gait to a low scoop in the rock, and from there down to the water and along the water's edge to a place where the cliff gave back into a small cove. There was a wall in the cliff, and the wall was the place. The headmaster spent a long time at the wall. The headmaster paid the wall with a small, slow drawing of his own blood, and an opening appeared, and they went in. The cave inside was a great low chamber. There was a lake. There was a small island at the center of the lake. The island had on it a stone basin. The basin held a green liquid. The headmaster looked at the basin. The headmaster looked at the lake. There is a thing here, the headmaster said, that is in the basin. We must take the thing. The boy looked at the basin from across the water. How? The headmaster considered for some time. The headmaster's face was the face of a man considering an old impossible problem and arriving very slowly at a conclusion he did not wish to arrive at. I must drink it, the headmaster said. The boy looked at him. What is in it? I do not know precisely. It is intended to weaken. It is intended to madden. It is intended to fill the drinker with such revulsion and despair that the drinker will refuse to continue drinking, but will be unable to stop himself. There will be water in the cave behind us in the lake. I will need water. The water will come at a cost. I will need a great deal of strength. I will need you to give me the cup. I will need you to make me drink the cup. I will need you not to stop. The boy considered the basin. The boy considered the headmaster. The boy looked at the headmaster's hand. You are dying, the boy said quietly. I am dying. You will not survive this. I will not survive the year either way, but this will hasten it. It will hasten it by weeks, perhaps months. It is the appropriate price. The boy did not move for a long time. He was thinking. He was thinking in the way Chigurh had taught him to think. He was thinking of cost. He was thinking of consequence. He was thinking of what could be obtained and what could not. He was thinking of which work he was being asked to do and what work was being done by whom. He turned to the headmaster. "I will not," he said. The headmaster looked at him. "What? I will not make you drink the cup," the boy said. "I will not. There is no need. The thing in the basin is not what we have come for. The thing in the basin is a misdirection. There is no horcrux in the basin. There is some other object at the bottom of the basin, perhaps, but it is a thing the man has placed there to draw attention. The man is not stupid. The man would not have placed his soul fragment at the end of a draft designed to weaken. The man would have placed his soul fragment in a place where the very approach would be the obstacle, but where the holder of the object, having approached, could obtain it without further toll. The toll is the cave itself. The toll is the wall. The toll is the lake. The lake is the toll. There is no further toll. The basin is theater." The headmaster stared at him. "How can you possibly know this?" "Because," the boy said, "I have studied this man for several years. I have read what he wrote when he was 16. I have read his school papers. I have read the diary I destroyed in second year. I have read the patterns of his cruelty. He is theatrical. He likes the spectacle. He likes the false performance. He likes the trap that is itself only a sign pointing at the real trap, which is a sign pointing at the real trap. He likes the symbolism of poisoning his pursuer. He does not actually wish to risk the destruction of his soul fragment by such a method. He wishes to make the pursuer drink the poison and then to retrieve the soul fragment from the corpse of the pursuer at some later point. The poison is what he wants you to drink. He does not want you to take the locket. He wants you to die in this cave. I do not. The locket," the boy continued mildly, "is not here. The locket has not been here for some time. The locket was taken from the basin in 1979 by a man named Regulus Black with the assistance of a house elf named Creature. Regulus replaced the locket with a forgery, a locket containing a note signed R.A.B. The forged locket was in the basin until some time after. The forged locket is presumably now in the basin still. I do not know whether the man knows the locket has been replaced. He may know, he may not. If he knows, then this entire arrangement is now a trap aimed at his pursuers, in the knowledge that the cup is empty. If he does not know, this arrangement is the same trap aimed at his pursuers in the false belief that the cup is full. Either way, the trap is the same. Either way, the cup is the trap. Either way, drinking it is the wrong move." The headmaster's mouth had opened. "How long have you known this?" The boy looked at him. "I have known the location of the locket since the 5th of December of last year. I have known of the existence of the basin since the 17th of January of this year. I have known you would propose this expedition since the 3rd of October of this year. I have known the trap was the trap for approximately 10 minutes. I am sorry, sir. I have not been telling you a number of things. I have not been telling you because there has not been a useful moment to tell you. There is now. This is the moment. I am telling you. I have the locket already. The locket has been destroyed for 5 months. I let you pursue the cave because you needed to. I came with you tonight because you needed me. I would not let you drink the poison because you do not need to. We can leave." The headmaster looked at him for a long time. After some moments, the headmaster sat down on the floor of the cave. He sat down rather suddenly. He sat with his hands on his knees and his head bowed. "I have been an old man," the headmaster said quietly, "who has been managing other people's lives for longer than I should have been managing them." The boy did not answer. "I have been managing your life," the headmaster said. "You have been trying. I have been failing. You have been doing what an old man does. I do not begrudge it. You should. I have decided not to." The headmaster looked up at him. "I do not," the headmaster said. "I do not know what you are. I do not know what kind of person you have become. I do not know what I have helped to make by my long indirection, by my failures, by my permissions. I do not know whether the man I will leave behind in this world is the man this country needs or a man it should fear. I have wondered. I have lain awake at night and wondered." The boy considered. "I will not be needed by this country," the boy said. "I will not be feared by it either mostly. I will not be visible to it. I will do work that improves things without taking credit. I have a teacher who has shown me how to do work without being seen. I will do that work for the rest of my life. The country will not know my name after another month. The country will not need to. That is the work that does the most good. The work of being seen is mostly the work of vanity." The headmaster looked at him. "You have grown into a strange man, Harry. I have. I am sorry I did not raise you. You did not raise me because better hands were on me. I do not regret it." The headmaster shook his head. "I do not know what I think of your other teacher," he said. "You do not have to know. You will not meet him much. He will outlive you by some years and will continue to do the work he does in the places he does it and will not impinge on this country except in those rare cases when this country impinges on him. He has been a quiet man my whole life. He will continue to be a quiet man." The headmaster nodded after a moment. "Help me up," he said. The boy helped him up. They left the cave by the way they had entered it. The boy did not retrieve the forged locket from the basin. He saw no need. They apparated back to the gates of Hogwarts. The headmaster looked at the boy in the gathering dawn. "There is one more thing," the headmaster said. "What? There's a man on the staff who is in fact a triple agent. He has been working for me. He believes he is working for the other side. He believes he is working for our side. He is correct on both counts. He is the only person besides me until tonight who has known of my impending death. He has been instructed, in certain circumstances, to be the agent of that death." "The man in the black robes," the boy said. "The man in the black robes. You wish me to know this. I wish you to know this. The man hates you. The man has reasons. The reasons are not your fault. The reasons are mine. The reasons are also your father's. The reasons are also a young woman who loved your father and not him. The man's hatred has been useful to me. The man's hatred has not been useful to him. I would ask after my death if it is in your power that you arrange for the man's hatred to be relieved. He cannot relieve it himself. He has tried. He has been carrying it for 16 years. It has been a great weight." The boy considered. "I will speak to him, thank you." The boy nodded. He spoke to the man in the black robes 2 months later in February of his 6th year. He sought the man out in his private rooms in the dungeons after curfew. He knocked on the door. The man opened the door. The man looked at him with the same particular hostility the man had reserved for him since the first day of first year. The man let him in without speaking. They sat across a small dark table. The boy said, "I would like to discuss my mother with you." The man's face went pale. The boy said, "I know that you knew her. I know that you loved her. I know that you have hated me in part because I look like my father, and that my father, when you knew him, was cruel to you, and that I have inherited from him a face you do not wish to see. I cannot help my face. I cannot help having had the father I had. I have not known my father. I have not known my mother. I have known only the cupboard and the man who took me out of it in the years that have followed. I am not my father. I am also not my mother, though I would have wished to be more like her had she lived. I am only myself. I have done a number of things in your school that you have not approved of. I have respected you in spite of your reciprocating disrespect. I have respected you because you taught your subject well, and because the work you have been doing under your hatred has been good work, and because I have understood since around the middle of my 4th year that you were not what you appeared. I would like to thank you. I would like to thank you on her behalf, since you cannot thank you herself." The man's eyes had filled. He did not look at the boy. He looked at the table. After a long time he said, "She would not have approved of you." The boy considered this. "She might not have," he said. "She would have loved me anyway. That is what mothers do. Yes, I have been told the headmaster will not survive the year." The man did not look up. "You will be asked to be the agent of his death." The man's face hardened. The man looked at the boy. "I would not have spoken of that to anyone," he said. "You did not. He spoke to me. I see. I want to tell you something. When the time comes, do it. Do it with as little pain to him as you can. Do not flinch. Do not bear it for the rest of your life. Do not bear it. It will be a service to him. It will be a service to us. It will be the last work you do for him. It will not make you what he is making you appear to be. He has spoken of you to me as he has spoken to no one else. He has, I believe, loved you. He has not had occasion to say so. I am saying it for him. I do not love you. I do not know you. I respect you. I am telling you what I know of his feeling because there is no one else to tell you and because you have carried it for too long." The man looked at the boy for a long time. "I see," the man said. The boy stood. He went to the door. He stopped with his hand on the door. "I am sorry," he said quietly, "for the man my father was to you when you were boys at this school. He should not have been so. I am sorry on his behalf because he cannot apologize. I am also sorry on my own behalf for the times I have made things harder for you than they need have been. I have on occasion been intentionally provoking. I will not be so anymore." The man looked at him with the dark eyes. "I will not," the man said, "find you any easier to teach. I do not expect you to. I expect only that we understand each other. We understand each other." The boy nodded. He went out. He did not see the man weep behind the closed door, the long, quiet weeping of a man whose grief has had no audience for 16 years, and who is permitted this one evening to weep alone in his own rooms, with a small ration of peace that has been given to him for the first time in his adult life. The boy did not see this and did not need to. He had said what had needed saying. The rest was the man's own. The headmaster died in the early summer at the man's wand on the high tower of the school in the manner the headmaster had arranged. The school mourned. The country mourned. The boy mourned. He mourned in his own way, which was to sit by the lake at sunset on the evening of the funeral and to think of an old man who had managed him and had failed to manage him and had at the last been a friend, and to think of a country that would now belong to the work that was coming. The work was coming. The boy had 3 weeks. He spent them as he had spent the other weeks of his life, working. He worked at the school. He worked on the small inn at the edge of the moor with Chigurh in London by post and by visits Sirius drove him to in the car. He worked with Hermione in the alcove. He worked with Ron in the side rooms of the kitchens. He worked alone in his bed at night with a candle, with his notebook, with his small careful schedule of moves and countermoves. He took the snake's measure in advance. He took the man's measure. He took his own measure. He took the measure of the place he had chosen. He took the measure of his teacher's stillness in the doorway he would stand in. He took the measure of the boy he had been in a cupboard 10 years before and the man he had become, and he found the two equal to one another in the matter of the night to come. The boy left the school at 10 in the evening. He went down the long lawn to the gates. The Dementors had been recalled. The gates were still warded. The boy passed through the wards by means of a small charm Chigurh had purchased and that the boy had memorized. He came out into the road beyond the gates. Sirius was waiting in a car. Sirius had grown to like cars. The boy got in. "You all right?" Sirius said. "I am all right." "You armed?" "I am armed." "What with?" The boy looked at his godfather. "With a wand," he said, "with a small folding knife. With a captive bolt pistol made for the slaughter of cattle of the model my teacher prefers, which I have been trained to use since I was 5. With a 9mm Glock semi-automatic pistol with 3 magazines, 2 of standard ammunition and 1 of silver-tipped rounds prepared by a wizard for the snake. With a small bone the size of a finger, which is a portkey that will activate on a particular phrase and take me out of the inn to a place of safety should the worst occur. With a clear mind. With a heart that has been waiting for tonight for 10 years. Sirius nodded. "That is a lot of things," he said. "It is the right number of things." They drove. They came down the road in the dark. They did not speak further. The moors smelled of heather and old stone in the small night wind. Sirius pulled the car up at the corner of the lane 200 yards from the inn and stopped the engine. "I love you," Sirius said. "I love you," the boy said. "I will be here when it is over." Yes, he got out of the car. He walked the last 200 yards. The inn was unlit. The boy keyed open the front door with a charm. He went in. He did not light any lamps. He sat at the long bar in the dark with his back to it, facing the door. He set the wand on the bar beside him at his right hand. He set the bolt pistol on the bar beside him at his left hand. The Glock was at the small of his back as it always was. The knife was in his boot. He waited. He waited an hour. He had learned to wait without losing his edge. He had learned this from Chigurh and from books and from his own work. He sat very still on the stool, and his breathing was the breathing of a small, steady animal that has chosen its place to lie down in and will not be moved. At midnight the front door opened. It opened slowly. It opened the way a door opens when the man entering wishes to demonstrate that he is in command of his entry. The man came through the door. The man was tall and thin and pale to the point of bonelessness. He had a face that had been remade. He had eyes the color of red glass. He wore black robes that fell to the floor. He had a wand in his right hand. He had a snake at his ankles that came in behind him and reared up and looked at the boy with the eyes of a creature that knew a meal when it saw one. The boy did not move. The man stood in the doorway. He looked at the boy at the bar. "You came alone." "I did." "You are not armed by wand." "I am armed by wand." "I am armed by other things." "I did not lie to you." The letter said unarmed by wand only as a courtesy. "I am armed." The man's mouth made the small twist that he used as a smile. "You are bold," the man said. "I am clear. That is a distinction." "It is." The man came forward into the room. He did not close the door behind him. The snake came with him, coiling, lifting its head, tasting the air. The man stopped at a chair some 10 feet from the bar and sat in the chair as if it were a throne. He arranged his robes about him. He folded his long, pale fingers in his lap. The wand was in his right hand still. "I read your letter," the man said. "Yes, I considered it. Yes, I considered in particular the phrase mutual interest. I do not ordinarily conceive of mutual interest between myself and persons such as you. You are a child. You are a child against whom my prophecy is set. You are a child who has been a thorn in my work since you were a year and 3 months old. You have grown into a peculiar instrument. You have been raised, I am told, by a muggle. I find this distasteful in a number of ways." But he paused. "But you have done things," the man said, "that I have not encountered in others. You have unmade a diary that should not have been unmakeable by a 12-year-old child. You have unmade a thing in the body of a possessed teacher with an instrument I do not understand. You have unmade objects that I had hidden in places I had thought hidden well. You have arranged for the freeing of a man I had ensured would die in Azkaban. You have moved across the surface of my plans like a small hard wind I cannot see. I have come tonight, I admit, to look at the wind." The boy did not answer. The man considered him. "Why have you brought me here?" "To make you an offer." "What offer?" "To call a coin." The man's red eyes did not move. "A coin, a coin. What does the coin decide?" "It decides everything." The man laughed. He laughed once, a thin, dry laugh. "You are a strange child." "I am. There is no coin in this room." "There is." The boy reached slowly into the side pocket of his robe and took out the worn American quarter that Chigurh had given him in a cupboard in Privet Drive 10 years ago. He held it up. He let the man see it. He set it on the bar. "There is a side with an eagle," the boy said. "There is a side with a man. The man is dead 200 years. He was a president. He freed himself. Call it." The man laughed again. He stood up out of the chair. "I do not call coins, child, I know." Then the boy looked at him. Call the coin, the man said suddenly. His voice changed, his voice rising into the formal cadence the man used when he was making what he considered a moment. Call the coin, boy, live or die, choose. The boy looked at the man for a long moment. The boy looked at the coin on the bar. The boy looked at the man again. Your coin doesn't decide for me, the boy said. The man's red eyes flickered. What? I decide, the boy said. I will not call. I have never called. I do not call. I am the coin. I am the hand. I am the air. I land where I land because I have landed. I will not give the work of my hand to a piece of metal. I will not give the work of my hand to a piece of fate. I will not give the work of my hand to you. The coin you imagine is in the room is not in the room. I have brought a coin to make a point. The point is that there is no coin. The point is that there has never been a coin. The point is that there is only you and there is only me, and one of us will leave this in and one of us will not. The point is that I have decided. I am the only one in this room. You are not in this room. You are a costume. You are a costume necessity wears. You are a costume fate wears. You are a robe and a snake and a face that has been remade. There is nothing under the robe. There is nothing under the face. There is only the costume. There is only the smoke. There is only the wraith. The wraith does not get to decide. I decide. The man drew his wand up sharply. The man began to pronounce the killing curse. The boy did 3 things in the next half-second. He picked up the wand at his right hand and pointed it at the snake at the man's ankles and pronounced a charm of binding which Chigurh had taught him at 14 and which held the snake fast against the floor for a count of 3. He picked up the bolt pistol at his left hand. He kept moving. The man finished the first syllable of the killing curse. The boy fired the bolt pistol. The bolt went through the snake's head. The bolt went through it and out. The snake's body went limp. The man finished the second syllable. The boy let the bolt pistol drop from his hand. He reached behind his back and drew the Glock. He fell sideways off the stool. The killing curse went over his head and struck the bottles on the rack behind the bar and exploded them. Bottles rained. The boy hit the floor on his shoulder, rolled once, came up on one knee, raised the Glock. He fired. The first round took the man in the chest, slightly to the right of center. Second round took the man in the chest, slightly to the left. The third round took the man at the bridge of his nose, just above his red eyes, in the place a captive bolt would have entered a steer. The man went down. The man went down in stages. He went down to his knees first, with a look on his remade face of an astonishment so total that it briefly displaced all other thought. He looked at the boy. His mouth moved. No sound came. He went down to all fours. His hands trembled. He fell sideways. He lay on the floor of the inn in the broken glass with the small wisp of a soul that was left in him separating slowly out of his body and rising as a thin, pale smoke. The boy stood up. He had cuts on his face from the bottles. He had cuts on his left hand from where the bolt pistol had bounced against the bar in falling. He had cuts on his neck. He did not seem to feel them. He walked over to the body. He looked down at it. He raised the Glock. He set the muzzle to the temple just above the bridge of the nose. He paused for 1/2 second. He squeezed the trigger. The fourth shot opened the side of the man's skull. The pale smoke that had begun to rise out of the body came faster now and gathered into a thin, shrieking wraith in the air above the body and tried to fly at the boy, as the wraith had tried in the corridor outside the defense against the dark arts classroom. And the boy stood with his arms a little out at his sides and the cypress wand in his right hand, which he had not yet put away, and his green eyes very steady. And the wraith struck him and passed through him and recoiled and gathered itself and struck again and again. It could not. It battered itself. It wailed. It fled at last toward the open door. In the open door it met Chigurh. Chigurh stood in the doorway with his hands at his sides. Chigurh had come in from the field behind the inn after the third shot. Chigurh stood with the silence of a man who has known a great many wraiths in his time. He did not raise a wand because he did not have one. He did not raise a hand. He looked at the wraith. The wraith hesitated. The wraith spun. The wraith looked for another exit. There was a back door. The wraith made for it. The wraith reached the back door, and there in the back door was the same Chigurh, or another Chigurh, or Chigurh's stillness extending through the place of the door like a stone, and the wraith could not pass. The wraith circled in the room. It circled 3 times. Then, because there was no other place to go, it gave a thin last cry and dissipated. It went out of itself in scraps into the air of the inn and beyond into the moor and beyond into the night and was no longer. The boy stood breathing for some time in the silence. The scar on his forehead, which he had felt all evening as a kind of low, quiet hum, gave one small bright flare and then went still. He raised his free hand and laid 2 fingers against the scar. The scar was the temperature of the rest of his skin. It had been hotter than the rest of his skin since he was a year and 3 months old, and now it was not. He took his fingers away. Chigurh stepped into the inn. He looked at the body of the man, he looked at the snake, he looked at the boy. The boy was standing in the broken glass. "You have surpassed me, student," Chigurh said quietly. The boy looked at him. "Choice is consequence," Chigurh said. The boy considered the words. "Yes," he said, "always." Chigurh nodded once. The boy slid the wand into the inside pocket of his robe. He picked up the worn American quarter from the bar. He looked at it once. He held it out to Chigurh. "I will not need this anymore," the boy said. Chigurh did not move to take the coin. "It is yours," Chigurh said. "It has been yours for some time. I have only carried it for you." The boy looked at the coin in his hand. He bent and put the coin in the breast pocket of the dead man's robe and stood up. "He has it now," the boy said. He had wanted it. "He has it." Chigurh smiled. It was the small interior smile that lived in the corners of his eyes more than in his mouth. The smile of a man who has been astonished by a thing he had taught himself out of, and then taught himself back into in a different shape. It would be the smile he wore most often in the years after this night. "We should go," Chigurh said. "Yes." The boy bent and retrieved the bolt pistol. He turned the small screw and the pistol reverted to its pen form, and he clipped it inside his robe over his heart. He picked up the spent bolt casings from the floor and pocketed them. He looked once around the room. He noted the angles. He noted the spatter. He noted that he had walked through some glass and that he should wipe his soles outside on the grass. He noted that they would need to do something about the body of the snake and the body of the man. Chigurh had already noted these things. Chigurh nodded once toward the back door. "I have it," Chigurh said. The boy went out the front door. Sirius was 100 yards down the lane with the car. The boy walked toward the car. He wiped his soles on the grass before he reached the road. He came to the car. Sirius looked at him in the dim lamplight. "You're bleeding." "I am bad, not bad." Sirius looked at his face. Sirius looked at his eyes. "It is done, it is done." Sirius drew a long breath. "You all right?" "I am." Sirius nodded. "Get in." The boy got in. They drove. The road in front of them was the road. The moor was the moor. The night was the night. The boy laid his head against the cold glass of the window and closed his eyes for a moment and opened them again. He did not sleep. He watched the country go past. He thought briefly of his mother and his father, whom he had not known and whose names he had only learned in the bank in Diagon Alley 4 years before. He thought of a cupboard. He thought of a coin in a hand on the linoleum of a hall floor. He thought of a butcher's tool against the temple of a fat man in an armchair. He thought of a country of iron and creosote. He thought of a small lizard on a ceiling. He thought of a tutor in a small house in Laredo. He thought of a thunderhead over a gulf. He thought of a wand in a worn box at the back of a shop. He thought of a green flame in a stone hearth and a snowy owl on a dormitory windowsill. He thought of a man on a road and a man in chains and a man in a graveyard. He thought of the headmaster's eyes filling. He thought of Hermione's hand on his sleeve. He thought of Sirius beside him in the car. He thought of Chigurh in the doorway of an inn that he would never enter again. He did not weep. He had never wept in his life that he was aware of. He did not begin tonight. He thought, as a man may think driving away from a place he will not return to, of what he had done. He thought of what it had cost. He thought of what it had not cost. He thought of what he had become. He thought of what he had not become. He thought of the long shape of his life so far, of his life ahead. He did not flinch from any of it. "I decided," he said quietly to the window. Sirius glanced at him. The boy did not turn his head. "I decided," he said again. He did not say to whom he was saying it. He may have been saying it to himself. He may have been saying it to the country. He may have been saying it to the dead. He may have been saying it to the wraith that was no longer a wraith. He may have been saying it to no one, which is the proper audience for the most important sentences a man will ever speak. They drove. Behind them in the small inn at the edge of the moor, a thin man in a long dark coat with an unusual haircut moved about the room in the silent way of a man who has cleaned many rooms. He worked without hurry. He worked without flourish. He took the body of the snake and the body of the man and he laid them carefully in the back room. He took the worn American quarter from the dead man's breast pocket and he held it in his hand for a moment and then he placed it back. He set the inn alight. He stepped out the back door into the field. He walked down through the field to the stream and across the stream and up the long slope of the ridge beyond, and at the top of the ridge he turned once and looked back. The inn was burning in the moor like a small steady offering against the great dark. He watched it for a moment. Then he turned and went down the other side of the ridge and he did not look back again. The fire would be discovered in the morning. The fire would be investigated. The investigation would find a great deal of ash and a number of small fragments of bone and an unaccounted quantity of broken glass. The investigation would find no body. The investigation would conclude little. The men investigating would write reports that contradicted one another, and the reports would be filed and the file would be closed, and the case would become one of the small permanent unfinished cases of the horrors of that year. An oddity, a fire on the moor, the body of a man with red eyes who had once been said to have returned and who appeared by all available evidence to have stopped being. The boy who had been the cause of the fire grew up. He went on. He completed his 7th year at Hogwarts without ceremony. sitting his examinations with his usual quiet exactness, and he left the school in June and he did not return for many years. He spent the summer on the small dry island in the Aegean. He spent the autumn with Chigurh in a small house outside Veracruz where the brown dog had died many years before and where a new brown dog now lay in the same shade of the same yucca tree and looked at him without surprise. He took up the work with Chigurh in the way the work was undertaken, by patient, deliberate consideration of each case. He took in time a different kind of work alongside it, a work of small, careful interventions in his old country, in the laws and in the institutions that resulted in changes nobody understood the source of and that improved certain narrow things for certain people. He never married. He never had children. He kept Hedwig until she died of old age and he buried her under a juniper tree on the Aegean island and her grave was unmarked. He kept the pearl-handled knife on his person for the rest of his life. He carried the cypress wand for the rest of his life. He carried the captive bolt pistol with him on certain journeys and not on others. He did not flip a coin. He did not flip a coin. He kept the worn American quarter, which had been Chigurh's, in a small box in a desk drawer in the room he kept on the dry island. He took it out from time to time and looked at it. He never used it. He never asked anyone to call it. He had, by the time he died at the age of 107 in a bed by a window overlooking a sea he had loved for 90 years, never asked anyone to call a coin in his life. He had decided instead every time. He had owned every consequence. When he was very old, sitting on the porch of the small house on the Aegean island in the late afternoon of a summer day, with the light falling slantwise across the dry stone and the sea below, a child of the small village climbed the path and came to the porch and stood looking up at him with grave dark eyes. The child asked him a question in Greek. The child had heard, the child said that the old man knew things. The child wanted to know what to do because the child had been given a choice by his uncle, and the choice was a choice between two bad things, and the child did not know which to choose. The old man considered the child for a long time. "Do you have a coin?" the old man said in Greek. The child reached into his pocket and brought out a small drachma. "Throw it away," the old man said. The child stared. "I do not understand." The old man smiled the small interior smile he had grown into over the long course of his life. "You do not need a coin," the old man said. "You will need only yourself. Hold the choice in your hand. Hold both bad things in your hand. Look at them. Weigh them. Choose. Choose with the part of you that is yours. After you have chosen, do not say the coin decided. Do not say the world decided. Do not say your uncle decided. Say I decided. Live with the consequence. The consequence is yours because the choice was yours. That is how a man is made. That is how a woman is made. That is the only way any of us are made." The child looked at him for a long moment. The child put the coin back in his pocket. The child thanked him and went away down the path. The old man sat in his chair and watched the light fall on the sea, and the sea was that day as it had been a great many days, and the old man's eyes were very steady, and he did not move. He had decided, he thought to himself, and his hand closed around the small worn American quarter in the box in the drawer of the desk inside the house, which was no longer his to flip and had not been for almost 100 years, and which he had kept anyway, in the way a man keeps the relic of a discipline he has surpassed, because it had been given to him in a cupboard in Privet Drive, by a man whose work he had inherited and whose blood he had not, but whose name he carried in the place under his ribs where such names are carried. He had decided, always.